two, hello. Hello. Let's get this going. Chin, excuse me, pardon me, I didn't want to sip my beverage without chinning you, as is tradition, as is the established tradition on this program. Chin. Enjoying my unbranded refreshment. That's what we're gonna have in when we establish communism. It's like in 1984 when they got that victory gin. We just have we have energy beverage, victory energy beverage. You get maybe 2 flavors. You get the white one and there's maybe like a red one or something. That's it. There's 2 flavors of state-sponsored energy beverage. Still waiting to get that Reign sponsorship back. I would love to have a bunch of cases of Reign here. Not gonna lie, I'm fine with no brands. State-issued cola for me, please. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like we take over the Coca-Cola Corporation. So we liberate the Coke recipe. We liberate the Diet Coke recipe, and then we're using that recipe for our state-sponsored brandless Diet Cola beverage, so people can enjoy the great taste. People can enjoy the great tastes of Coke products, but in a non-branded and non-branded can. That reinforces the ideals that we're trying to get across. The ideals of solidarity, victory. You know. I caved and bought some of those tiny Coke cans. What is that about? What is it about? I don't know. I don't know what it's about. Usually when I have one of those, I'm just like, I could do with a little bit more. I could do with just a little bit more. I'd take one of those in one sip. It's gone. We got to nationalize the KFC herbs and spices. Not even. You know what? I don't hate KFC. I enjoy getting a KFC bucket once a year. I think we're gonna supplant KFC though with the Korean brand. Okay, Korea is doing fried chicken better than anybody right now, including the Colonel. Yeah, I said it. Yeah, I said it. The Colonel's getting fucking lapped. Okay? Sorry, you had you had your chance. You had your chance at total chicken hegemony, and you blew it. We're doing Korean chicken now. Oh, that is good. That is very good. Didn't get a horrible night of sleep last night. I've been trying to watch the new Mission Impossible film, Dead Reckoning, and I've been a fan of that franchise, but I think they overreached with this Dead Reckoning. Trying to split this movie into 2 parts. I find a lot of it pretty boring. I've had a hard time being absorbed in it. The previous film had Henry Cavill. He was great. They had that fantastic bathroom fight early in the movie in the big skydiving sequence. Within the first 20-25 minutes, it really brings you in. There's some great car chases and cool shit. In this one, there's some decent stunts, some decent action, but the whole thing with the bad guy in it is kind of boring. This guy Gabriel, I don't know. He doesn't seem threatening. The actor it seems kind of boring. Maybe the actor is great. I don't know. Maybe the actor is fantastic. I'm not really familiar with his work, but it's kind of just okay. The end of that one was amazing on the cliff. I actually didn't make it that far. I fell asleep like shortly before. So I missed that part. I'm going to try and probably watch the end later tonight. I am going out tonight. I'm going out to see some like media people in Montreal. Perhaps when I get home, I will watch that. Sean, are you distractedly talking about The Fog? I was talking about the Cavill one. Okay, yeah. Excuse me. Did some dude named Gabe doesn't strike fear in your heart? Yeah. Wait, wasn't that the name of the guy from Timothy Oliphant's character from the Die Hard 4? The same kind of thing. He's a fine actor, but did not buy him for a moment as like an intimidating villain in that movie. Die Hard 4 was fucking bad. Not canon. Not canon. The Fog was a romp. That was very good. I loved that. Loved the score. Die Hard Bore, more like. Yeah. No, it's not good. It's campy but enjoyable. I guess just like my thing about that is like at that point, and then in the next one, which I didn't even see, when he's like going to Russia or whatever. Then you've turned into like in Die Hard 4 and beyond, McClane now is some like globetrotting super cop, which is like that's every single action guy. The whole appeal of John McClane as a character is he's just some schlub. That's the whole point. He's just some schlub. He's like a clever guy. He's like a dumbass Irish cop, but he's kind of clever. You know? And he can kind of like figure out his way out of a jam that he's in through no fault of his own. Hot take, Die Hard 3 is the best one. I don't think that's that hot of a take. I don't agree, because divorced loser representation matters, yeah. I don't think it's that much of a hot take. It's very good, Die Hard 3. I think that Die Hard 1 is a masterpiece, and it's just, I don't agree that it's better, but Die Hard 3 is very good, though. Yeah, he fucked up his marriage. He's having a shitty Christmas. That's compelling, you know? He's a loser. He's a bum. He's not this globe-trotting action hero. That's the whole point, is that it was a movie that came out in the era of kind of like the big, muscly super cops of American action movies, and he's just some fucking asshole. He's Bruce Willis. He's the guy from Moonlighting? Really? That guy? The only problem with 3 is that they don't explain the water bottle puzzle properly. That's always bugged me as well. I've never understood that. All these years. I saw it in the movie theater in 1992 or whatever. I still don't get it to this day. Oh. So I don't know. But anyway, the new Mission Impossible, it's just okay. I think splitting it into 2 is not a good move. I think it's interesting too because they make this really big effort to tie it to the other films in the franchise, which I think is good. It's good to do that. But I also thought in this new Mission Impossible film, they're really counting on people that know the lore, the deep lore of the Mission Impossible movies. They keep bringing back people too, and it's like, oh, it's her, it's this person, and I was just watching it going like, who is this? What's going on? Who's that? What is happening? It's like I've seen the movies, you know? I think there needs to be some kind of a balance between making sure there's like a lineage in the franchise, but also making a movie that anyone can just walk into and get the basic idea of what's going on. Tom is looking a little weird. I agree. I think even in the last movie, it wasn't as noticeable. I think he's getting to this stage where he's got to move away from this kind of character, you know? I think he's got to embrace, like, what is he, 60-something now? I think he's just got to embrace being an older guy now. You know, and he can be a very good actor. Even in the Mission Impossible movies, he could become like more of the elder guy of the team that's recruiting the young people to go out and do all the action stuff. There needs to be a balance of Tom Cruise not being employed anymore. One of the biggest Cruise haters in the community. Too many Thetans coursing through his veins. That's the thing. It's like, it's hard to believe him at this point, I think, being the big action guy. Even in the last movie, he was able to pull that off. It's starting to be less and less believable. I don't believe that there's this like fucking spy guy who's out getting Botox and getting work done and is still able to look like he's in his 30s when he's like 60 years old. He thinks he's immortal because of Scientology. Well, that's probably literally true, isn't it? Guy in the chair is a valid team position. There's nothing wrong with graduating to be the guy in the chair. You know? That would come full circle. In the first movie, it's Jon Voight in that role. In the first Mission Impossible, the Brian De Palma one. The water puzzle thing is as follows. Fill the 5-gallon jug. Empty 3 gallons into the 3-gallon jug, leaving 2 gallons in the 5-gallon jug. Empty the 3-gallon jug completely, and then refill it with the remaining 2 gallons from the 5-gallon jug. Fill the 5-gallon jug again. Empty 1 gallon from the 5-gallon jug into the 3-gallon jug. The 5-gallon jug is left with exactly 4 gallons of water. But how do you just empty 1 gallon? Okay, I think I get it. So the 3-gallon jug only has 2 gallons. So you just you top that up. I get it. I suppose I get it. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
3 months sure go by fast. I appreciate you, Rob, and this is not a cult TRRS club.
Thank you, Hunger Games, for the 3 months of Tier 1. I appreciate you too. It's cool to see all the 2-year badges and the growing number of 3-year badges, but I really like, and it's very satisfying seeing new people come into the community and start to feel at home and be part of the chat and be part of the community. I think that's very cool. And I appreciate it. What a 2 years it's been. Almost 3. Again, we're exactly 2 weeks away. We're exactly 2 weeks away from the start of Season 4 of TRRS. And what a run it's been. Oh boy, have we been through a lot. Have we ever been through a lot on this program? Let's just do this for the next 4 hours. I agree. I think we should do that. COVID, Israel, Ukraine, Israel again, the election, China, the new Cold War. We've been following, like that's really the thread that we've been following for 3 straight years. Every day, the new Cold War, the new Red Scare, the trucker convoy, Then we go back to gang coverage. What that feels like about 5 years ago. The honkening, exactly. The oaf occupation. It is kind of funny seeing these like save the children things just have it not catching on. Aren't these like save the children people like camping out somewhere?
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I am calling on Jeff Bezos to release the January 6th tapes.
Thank you, G Cleppy. Oh wow, 35 months of tier 1. I think very, very close to the new badge for G Cleppy. Thank you, G Cleppy, for being here all this time and supporting me in the community. I really, really appreciate it. There's some new psycho posts in relation to the trucker convoy trial. I don't support you well. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, in regards to the trial, but yeah, aren't they like camped out in some like parking lot somewhere? But now not as many people cares. It's like a few dozen real diehards, and they're not able to make this whole thing connect with a bigger audience like they were able to last time. They're just a bunch of sad holdouts now. Sometimes decades can occur in just 4 seasons. It's true. We've gone through a lot. We've covered a lot of different stories. I have personally changed a lot my political leanings. My life has changed a lot. Jesus. Almost like they got that way what they wanted. Yeah, that's as well. You have more Lenin busts now. That's true. Yeah, it's like what the people are like, why are we protesting? We complained about all these mandates and they dropped all the mandates. Like why do we need to go back? Why do we need to keep doing this? But there's more stuff. The WEF. It just doesn't hit quite the same. The talking about the 15-minute city thing. The World Economic Forum. And George Soros want you to live in a city where the fucking grocery store is in your neighborhood. I think most people are like, you know what, that doesn't seem so bad to me. I'm just not mad about that. I don't know. I know you want me to be, but I'm just not that mad about it. Damn it, they want my life to be convenient. I think I would have gone insane a long time ago if not for Rob in this community. Well, thank you, Sam. Again, as I always say, it's been, for me as well, it's been very valuable. I used to live right beside a grocery store and it was amazing. Like, yeah, I live in a 15-minute city right now and it's fucking great. I like not having to drive my car everywhere and sit in traffic all the time. I like going to the grocery store 5 minutes away from where I live. It's actually, I like having a good transit system in the city that I live in so I don't have to sit in my fucking car all the time. I don't even have to cross any roads to get to the grocery store. Hell yeah, B-Rat. Where do you live again, B-Rat? You're in like... I don't want to guess. I'll probably just end up insulting you. I like that Rob looks and sounds extra Canadian today. In Slovenia. Okay. Cool. I'm going to come visit you, B-Rat. I'm going to come visit you in Slovenia. And bring me out on the town. I look and sound extra Canadian today. This is how I look for 8 months out of the year. The wonders of small town former Yugoslavia. I would genuinely love to see that. This is how I look like 8 months out of the year. It's really just between the months of like June, July, August that I wear tiny little shorts and t-shirts and stuff. And then I just go back to looking like this all the time. Yeah, summer and flannel, that's right. And in the winter, I just wear more layers under this. I wear like long john, long underpants under my regular clothes. I did order a balaclava as well. It hasn't got here yet. I ordered a red balaclava, which I'm looking forward to getting. I've never worn a balaclava before. I'm excited. I'm going to wear that this winter with no shame. Yeah, like a bright red one. Exactly. An IRA stream. That's the thing. It's like it's good to keep warm, and if you want to do terrorism. As a joke. As a joke. That's a parody. I want to eat baklava in a balaclava. That would be good. I mean, baklava is good in any circumstance.
The Canadian is growing out its winter coat to protect him during the long northern winters.
So make sure you don't wear it at any banks. You waltz in just like, here's my wallet. It is a 3-hole balaclava. No, I was almost saying baklava. It is a 3-hole. Yeah. I would like to clarify that I do not want to do terrorism, but the balaclava would be an essential part of withholding identity if I did want to. And that's all. That's all you need to say about it. I had amazing baklava in a Uyghur restaurant last week. We can get some very good baklava around here as well in this neighborhood. I'm going to get so confused by talking about these two things. Did you know it's illegal to wear a balaclava in Virginia? Can't obscure your face. That seems strange. Is it what is it? It's a free country or what? You can't put something on your face if you want to? My friend got pulled over one time for driving with a scarf over his face because his heater in his car was busted. That's fucked up. Sticking with you, Shanka. I could do both. A balaclava and a new Shanka could be a potent combination. How can the facial recognition work if we can't see your face? We paid good money to this Israeli tech company to do this facial tracking algorithm. You're messing with it. Ushanka, balaclava with mouth hole, and a cigar. The new commie look. I can't do cigars. I'm never going to be a cigar guy. I'm just never going to be a cigar guy. It's not going to happen. I'm not even a cigarette guy. Cigarettes make me want to vomit. Unlit cigars also count. Yeah. Very big on snoods. What is snoods? I'm too weak to smoke. Also, narrator, I've tried to take up smoking before because it looks cool. It looks cool as hell. We were watching Ghostbusters the other day, and they're always blasting cigs in that movie. Same with John McClane in Die Hard. You know, there's no cooler look than the cigarette dangling out of the mouth. It looks cool as hell, but I can't do it. I just cannot do it. It makes me feel horrible. I'm gonna become a snuff tobacco guy. I do like my vape though. I really do. I really do enjoy my little weed vape. I would actually like to get a CBD, some CBD cartridges, just so I could because sometimes you don't want to be high or whatever. It would be nice to sometimes just when it's more of just like a mild relaxant. the vape has been helping a bit with the bad feelings. The fucked up thing for me with that is that sometimes it's the cure to the bad feelings and sometimes it's the cause of them. You know? Sometimes I'm like, wow, I'm way too high now. I'm starting to have some really bad feelings. And then sometimes I'm like, I'm having some really bad feelings. I need to get high to stop this. Figure that out. Figure that one out, folks. The cause and solution to all of life's problems. It's true. Weed paranoia can't be underestimated. I'm usually pretty good at dealing with that, though. And shutting down that train of thought. But sometimes it can be rough. I've been like, especially lately, I've been like trying to really isolate the activities that I can do if I ever am having bad feelings. So, which is more often than not lately. But like, bro, I can know DC was canned somewhere other than OKC. Jesus. That's a level of beverage knowledge that even the masters aren't at. Last time I got way too high, I thought I was puppeting my body from a fourth dimension. I think you just saw the truth for what it is, though, in that moment, and then it was too incomprehensible. So your brain said, no, I don't want to have this. I don't want this. One day I'll learn to actually combat intrusive thoughts instead of getting lost in a dissociative anxiety daydream. I mean, for me, it's doing something like cleaning. Making my bed, for some reason, really, like, I find that helpful. You know, it's like you can be in clutter. Like, you don't need. I'm not a neat freak at all. But when I walk into my room and I see a big unmade bed, it's like, you know, or just like just tidying up, doing the dishes, something like that. Put on some music and doing the dishes. Working on like a creative thing. I'll start opening up some music. I'll pick up the guitar and start playing with the guitar. I'll open up some of my music stuff and play around with that. Just like focusing on things like that. Paging Dr. Peterson. Well, the thing is, I'm giving you that advice, but I'm cool and not weird. That's the big difference. Yeah. It can actually help to not live in squalor, to not live in a huge mess. It can help you feel better to like deal with that, but I'm not a fucking weird creep at the same time. That's the big difference, okay? Big dishes guy. I love doing dishes. Very therapeutic. I hate doing them, but I must admit that I do feel a lot better. Again, it can be cluttered, but you go into the kitchen and the sink's empty. No dirty dishes in the sink. You go into your room, the bed's made. That makes a big difference. Just pick up the glasses. Like, chat right now. Look around you. If you have like 2 or 3 glasses or coffee mugs lying around your room, your workstation, wherever you're at, go pick those up. Just bring them to the sink. You know? And I'm not lecturing you. Listen, I got a pile of important documents that I have not dealt with on my desk here. I'm looking at it right now. Pile of important documents. I hoard all kinds of shit. Oh, you know what my really bad hoarder thing is? My really bad OCD, like, canned thing is? Like, you know, I drink a lot of canned beverages. Like, you know this, right? You know this. And I can't get rid of the cans. I don't like you go to the grocery store. I can't do the thing where you go to the grocery store and you put your cans in the machine. There's something about it that it makes me physically like uncomfortable. You know? And so then I have this I'll have like on my counter, I'll have a whole counter full of cans, and then on my back patio or whatever it is, I got a big bag full of cans that I just don't know what to do with. You just got 2 DC cans? That's good, Lodane. That's good. I develop can graveyards. I'm also hoarding 2 bags of cans because they aren't going to be recycled. Like, it's good to just put them out because, like, there's people that always come through that are trying to find cans so they can bring them to the grocery store because it's like, I probably got $5 worth of cans at the grocery store. So, but it's like, I want to find a way to facilitate that. So I'm not just leaving it to chance. I hate getting rid of the cans. It's a big problem. I get a backlog. I have a part of my kitchen that's all cans. And then when I get rid of them, I have a big bag of cans and I don't know what to do with them. Pretty sure all the recycling is going in the landfill. Most of it, yeah. Most of it. Not even a landfill in your own community, but we ship it to like Thailand. We put it on boats. We take all the cardboard and all the plastic and all the recycling stuff. We pack them into shipping containers. That goes onto a boat. The boat goes to like Indonesia or the Philippines or Singapore or wherever. And then it maybe gets thrown in a landfill there, or it just sits on the boat because these countries have stopped taking all this shit. Yeah, I think cans are the exception, and glass as well. Yeah, but the plastic and the cardboard though, it's just garbage. Recyclable plastic gets chipped and reused. I guess that's probably a low percentage of what we're recycling though, isn't it? And probably if it's just mixed in with a bunch of stuff that's not recyclable, it ends up just not getting to where it needs to go. Nothing that sends me doomer spiraling more than there being up to 6 pieces of single-use plastics that's just holding a kid's toy in place. You need like a fucking engineering degree to open it up. The kid's toy, also single-use plastic. Well, in a way, I mean, some of those, like I have toys from when I was a kid that my kid now plays with, that I've had for 30, 40 years. So you guys don't do recycling bins at home? Yeah, we do. I recycle. I put all my recycling in the recycling containers and it gets picked up by a private company here. My point is, though, that like I don't think a lot of this is actually being recycled. I think a lot of the stuff that we're told to recycle is just going in a landfill in another country, or it's just sitting in a boat in the ocean, or it's just getting dumped into the ocean and getting added to this big giant continent-sized pile of garbage in the ocean. It was mostly a joke about how you buy the toy, but the kid or cat plays with the box instead. Yeah, that is right. You do see a lot of that as well. Where I live, we have municipal compost bins at home too, which I believe is real. We have that as well. We have the compost also. Anyway, my point though is that I have a big thing of I'm a can hoarder. That's what I've determined about myself. I'm a big time can hoarder. I'm doing my part. Instead of throwing away all my single-use plastics, I save up for one big pile, then burn it in the burn pit, no doubt creating a half-mile poison zone around my house. Absolutely. Absolutely. I see you're a big-time Brandon supporter as well, obviously. Yeah. Lesser of two evils, baby. We love it. It's how inspiring that is. We're talking war crime Joe Brandon today. Baby killer Brandon, they call him. Oh, is it 28 days later tonight? Fuck, I can't do tonight. I'm going out tonight. I can't. I would love to watch that with folks. I thought Friday was the next one. I cannot do tonight. It's so good, Marty. We are going to talk about this stuff. I'm just like... You know. I think yesterday was really and honestly, 3 years, however many hours of content that I've done. Actually, let's look at this. Analytics, achievements. Look, I didn't even realize this, but on the 7th, on the 7th of October, I passed 2,000 hours. That's like the highest badge you can get on Twitch, the Empire Business. Stream for 2,000 hours total. Passed on October 7th. And that's like that's a lot of talking. You know, that's 2,000 hours that I have spent sitting here in front of the camera talking about stuff, talking about politics, talking about cans or Columbo or MASH or whatever it is. Those are the only 4 examples that I could think of from the 2,000 hours. Those 4 things are the main things that I talk about on here. Some of you spent licking that egg. That's true. That is true. And honestly, I think yesterday was the first time in those 2,000 hours that I've been sitting here and talking that I just was like speechless. Like I was really just, I was trying to like think of what to say and I just couldn't say anything. Like we were saying, we've covered all kinds of big news stories and narratives and different things for over these last 3 years, but it's like that was the first time in those 2,000 hours that I really felt that way. In a lot of ways, the last week has been a culmination of everything we've talked about to that point. Well, that's true as well. It's like I do feel like we're more prepared to process some of these things because of the time that we have spent breaking all these things down. Yeah, colonialism, mass media, propaganda, for sure. And it's like it really was kind of a culmination of all that. Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., Genocide Joe. That's could stick as well. Was it already 1:43? Oh yeah, I started late. My noon at the latest start times have been becoming more and more difficult. And I don't want to do this thing like where I try to center myself or act like I'm a fucking victim for spending all the time talking and thinking about this. Like, I'm so comfortable in my life, you know? I'm comfortable in my apartment. I get to spend time with my son and take care of him. We're safe. We're warm. We have enough to eat. You know? I don't want to be like, I'm so sad from talking about the war. I'm so sad. You know, I think it's kind of pathetic. You know, there's people that are dealing with real trauma. There's people experiencing real crises and having to try and live their lives with it. So I'm not saying that. I guess just what I will say though is just I think that it is having some kind of psychological effect. I'm sure on all of us. You know, just if you're paying attention to this all the time, you know, it does have a psychological effect. And I really have felt today and yesterday especially like a sense of like disorientation. Yeah, the Sean King thing. Yeah, that's me. That's me. So yeah, I really did feel a sense of like, especially yesterday and today, the feeling like physically and mentally sort of disoriented. I was sitting at the window thinking, am I a hero? I won't say a hero because what's a hero? It is good to recognize how lucky we are. It's also nice to recognize the beauty of community and how we support those around us. Yeah, it is. And names it the Rob Rousseau Show. I don't want to make it about me, Rob Rousseau. To be fair, the show is really just TRRS now, you know? Other people might call him a hero, but he'd never be so narcissistic as to call himself that. Exactly. If other people want to say that, I mean, I'm not going to argue with them. But I really do think it's an effect of if you're really paying attention to the propaganda and trying to psychologically like latch onto something so you don't get like sucked down this path by this tidal wave. You don't get unmoored by this tidal wave of propaganda and trying to hold on to your idea of like what the truth is, what objectivity is. And you're just inundated with so many different conflicting and contradictory ideas that it really is like psychologically fucked up to try and process. It's good actually to feel bad about us doing a genocide. No, it is. It is. Like people are saying, like, why do you focus on this? Like, you're not there or whatever. But it's like, yeah, we're complicit in it. Our government is supporting it, so we're complicit in it. Makes me question history. It makes you question reality. If you're on the other side of empire, you're probably right. Well, that's exactly what I've always tried to remind myself of, you know? I just like, you know, there was a whole yesterday with the bombing of this hospital, and then you saw all the spin and the obfuscation and people being, all of a sudden, people that really need to see like the evidence, you know? Like, let's say a part of Ukraine is being bombed by Russia, Kharkiv or whatever it is. Russia's bombing Kharkiv, and then a hospital or a fucking orphanage or something explodes, and Putin says like, "Hey, I didn't do this. This wasn't me." What does our media do in that point? What does our media do? Do they say like, "Well, hold up now. Hold up. Let's wait till we get to the bottom of this. Let's explore and no. Of course not. Of course no one would believe that. This whole thing of like where you're asked to doubt the idea that Israel, the country that is currently, I know that didn't happen. I'm just using that as an example for the way that the media, is skeptical about certain things and is willing to completely disregard that sort of objectivity when it comes to official enemies, When do we employ this like J-school objective journalist thing, and when do we be like, no? Yeah, then Russia produces an audio recording of Ukraine soldiers discussing accidentally blowing up the dam. I haven't listened to it. We can listen to it in a bit. But yeah, like when do you have that J-school objectivity, and when do you say like, no, this is not a time for objectivity. Let's just be on the right side of this. Let's just say that the country that's doing all the bombing right now is responsible for this bombing as well. And then, so that was all yesterday. We're paying attention to that. And then I wake up today, and a lot of the people that were kind of like talking about this are like hedging all of a sudden. Oh, now we've seen some new images. Now we're kind of having to cast doubt on it. Now we have to kind of walk back what we were saying. And it's just like, I think it's in Arabic. Not sure what value listening to it would be cool, because there's not translated, but there's like subtitles, so you can see, because it's being used for English language media. And I don't know, it's disorienting. Like I said, they make you question yourself. They make you question like your own two eyes. And that's, for me, exactly what I'm going to continue to do. Like, I don't think it's really useful to kind of hedge on these things, to be like, oh, I should walk back what I said. I should delete that tweet. I should clarify. I'm just going to continue believing that the country that's engaged in this relentless bombing campaign that has dropped over 6,000 bombs on Gaza, that has killed now thousands of people, many of them children, over the last 10 days or so, I'm just going to say they're responsible for this bombing of the hospital. And you can show me a picture of a parking lot with some red lines drawn on it. All the OSINT guys are on top of this. All the OSINT guys are at it again, And who is it too? It's Bellingcat. It's people from the ASPI, our good friends, the ASPI, who have been repurposed from doing Uyghur stuff now to doing pro-Israel stuff. That's how much they care about people committing genocide against Muslims. That's how much they care about the Muslim defenders have logged on. The Muslim defenders at the ASPI have logged in to assure us that Israel had nothing to do with bombing this hospital and killing, hundreds of people. Seeing as how they announced and warned they were going to do it before they did it hours later, I'm going to go with that. Considering they took credit for it immediately and then deleted that and then started to spin and obfuscate. And they've put out 25 different stories. It's so confusing and disorienting. What is the ASPI? It's the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. It's a think tank that's funded by Raytheon and other weapons manufacturers, that does research that promotes narratives that benefits empire, and then the research that they do gets picked up by the political class and the media class. And yeah, I'm gonna assume that the country that lies every single fucking time this happens is lying this time. They lied about Shireen Abu Akleh, and then it's like, of course, they lie, and when everyone's upset and outraged, they lie, they deflect, they say it was Hamas, they say it was this, and then months go by, and then later on, it's like, okay, that's what happens, and then no one cares anymore, because it's completely at that point been diluted. It's been diluted. The nonstop lies over the last couple of weeks about various different crimes that we're supposed to believe, yeah, I'm going to believe that they're fucking lying this time as well. I don't know if any of these people have ever heard a little parable about the boy who cried wolf. I don't know. They teach this shit to little kids. When you lie and lie and lie and lie and lie over and over and over again, and this is not just Israel, but mainstream media in the West about anything when it comes to empire. Yeah, when moments like this come, I'm going to not believe you. I think you're lying now too. Yet they lied about the Nord Stream pipeline as well, despite us obviously knowing on day one, on moment one, knowing exactly what happened. Yeah, and the Kunduz hospital was the exact same thing. Who are you going to believe, this innocent little boy or a wolf? Like, this is literally the playbook every single time some horrible atrocity happens that Israel's responsible for. We don't know anything about it. We're looking into it. Oh, it was Hamas. Maybe we did it, but it was because Hamas was using human shields. There was that article that's being shared that went viral that's like from the year 2000 about this exact strategy, which has been now employed for decades and decades and decades. Yeah, they've bombed multiple other hospitals. They called this hospital and tried to have it evacuated. They've been the people that have been bombing civilians now for the last 10 days, they bombed a fucking mosque today. And that's, I think, the really sick thing about this as well, because then we start focusing on this one incident. And then it gets into the he said, she said. Hamas says this. The IDF says this. And then the OSINT guys get involved. And then we're like, oh, it's complicated. It's not so black and white. You thought it was one thing, but maybe it's actually something different. And then you start thinking about this one incident, and everything gets laser focused on this one incident. And then for most people say, like, well, I guess it's kind of confusing. Like, who knows what happened? Meanwhile, all the nonstop atrocities that no one denies, that no one is denying, are just continuing. And there's no debate about it. They're bombing UN schools and overriding UN resolutions as always. Like, they're their own representatives, not just random cranks in the media. Their own representatives are going on the media being like, we don't consider these people civilians. Oh, you're fucking asking me about civilians? They're not innocent. You know, they voted for Hamas. They're going on there saying, we intend to do genocide. We're doing ethnic cleansing and we like it and we think it's good. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and think that those people are responsible for this. I'm just going to continue believing that. But it's so disorienting. It makes you so confused. And then finally, we did it, but that was so long ago. Why are you bringing up old stuff? Why are you focusing on this? You're an anti-Semite to focus on this. So that's it. And it's less like, so I was so fucking disoriented last night and today from this barrage of like lies and obfuscation. And I just felt like today too, I just had such a hard time doing anything. I'm just sitting there scrolling on my phone, just scrolling and just seeing the nonstop disasters, seeing the lies, seeing the people getting confused. You know? It's like fucking... really unpleasant. We are looking forward, not backward. Seeing this many willing marks is disheartening. I've seen some of the cooler than cool shit poster guys being like, I don't think this was a strike on a hospital. I don't think it killed 500 people, because I guess it's cringe to care about this. So some of these people have been good on this, and I'm not taking that away from them. So yeah, that's the thing. When you bomb and kill thousands of civilians for weeks, and then you have people like Andrew Coyne, pathetic dog, and empire propagandist Andrew Coyne, saying like, people just believe this because Hamas said it. I'm Mr. Enlightened Centrist. There are people who are only believing this. Oh, you believe Hamas now? It's not Hamas saying this. It's the fucking doctors at the hospital saying this. It's the people that have been living through this bombing campaign this time and all the other previous bombing campaigns over the decades saying it. Oh, you just believe Hamas. Like, that's fucking ridiculous. The way that that's been used to delegitimize everything about this struggle. People on Twitter have barely any effect on public opinion, though. All the biggest newspapers here in Germany ran with the Hamas did it story, so most people will believe that. Most people will believe that, or at the bare minimum, they'll be like, well, it's who knows what happened. Some people say one thing and others say another thing, and we just don't know, and it's just too confusing. Coin with the ultimate cursed flag emoji combo. I was thinking about that meme that was going around on Chinese social media the other day. That's actually really accurate. The Ukraine and Palestine flags, they're the anti-war contingent. The Ukraine and Israel supporters, they're the dogs for the U.S. empire. The Palestine and Russian flags are correctly understand international geopolitics. And like the Israel and Russia flags were like reactionary ethno-nationalists or something like that. And that was good. I saw where we were in that chart and I was like, that's us. We get it. So yeah, it's an easy way to understand though. If someone has the Israel and Ukraine flag, just an absolute shill for empire, a pathetic, childish person. Yes, social Darwinist, that's right. So yeah, this is just like this whole incident, this whole last couple of weeks have been so fucking... It's just this nonstop stream of horrific images, and then just this tidal wave of lies and deflections and propaganda, and trying to cling to this like principled moral stance. You know? At least a Ukraine-Palestine combo would have some surface-level consistency. Yeah, and that's why they described it as the anti-war contingent. Like, at least, yeah, like that's not a stance that I agree with, and I think most Ukrainian nationalists would not agree with it either, but, like, that's at least coherent, you know? Which flag indicates guys who lick a snack every now and then? That's the badge that you have right now in this community. Dogs of the U.S. Empire. That's right. That's why it's very easy to dismiss people. It's really good, honestly. You have to find where you are on this map. Where you want to be is here. I wanted to actually look at some of Carl's content today. We've been focusing on this so much, and I want to continue focusing on it as well. I do want to. There's this whole like Belt and Road conference going on right now that I really want to focus on as well. I know Carl is doing some coverage of that on RT, and I think Ben Norton as well is part of that also. So I would really like to spend some time talking about that. I also wanted to watch that Finkelstein interview. How much time do I have? I have about 2.5 hours, I guess. Maybe a bit more. Do we have time for all that? I don't know. Did you see the Canadian-Chinese plane incident? Yes, I did. It aggressively approached our spy plane. Yes, Carl commented on those aggressive Chinese jets aggressively patrolling their own coast in response to Canadian jets. I believe it was a spy plane. They're aggressively approaching our spy plane. Can you believe these fuckers? Can you believe these jokers? They're sending spy balloons to us, and then they're messing with our spy planes. Can't believe these people. Let's look at some of this Brandon footage, I guess. We'll look at some of the Brandon footage. We can talk a bit more about this hospital. But like, the whole thing about the hospital, though, too, is just like to not let the waves of propaganda push you from where you are. You know? Israel's responsible for the bombing of the hospital. Israel's continuing to carry out massacres all the time that we're focusing on this. And the more that you then like water down your position, I see people that have like when you're close to the media, when you're close to like the real media world, people are trying to do this thing where like, well, they often lie and they did this and that, but we can't say for sure. We can't say for sure, you know? I think we can say for sure. And the most important thing is like that we see what's going on. This is part of a campaign of terror that's being waged by Israel against the people in Gaza and against Palestinian people. And elsewhere in the West Bank and other places, there are these armed settler groups that are engaging in like brutal violence against people as well. So let's just keep focusing on that. Let's not lose sight of that. I'm not, and that's the thing. That's when it comes down to this thing. I'm not going to participate in any way in this narrative that obfuscates what the power dynamic is here, or who is at fault. Let's not forget they're literally burning down Palestinian houses in the West Bank last night. Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is it. It's like I was pointing out, you get laser focused on this one incident, and then you see the different people and you say, oh, Bellingcat and the ASPI are putting out these images with red lines drawn on them and some satellite imagery. And they're obviously saying, well, like, let's hold on here. It doesn't look like blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, that obfuscates this campaign of mass bombing and mass murder and terrorism that we're seeing. And these people are paid, they're connected to the NED, they're connected to the U.S. arms manufacturing industry. Let's say it was 100% Hamas. Who's at fault for Hamas? Like, well, that's if you ever want to go down that road, that's the ultimate answer there as well. Who's the country that's waging war right now? When bombings happen and civilians are killed in a war that you're waging, well, you're responsible. Before we even look at this Biden clip, though, too, you got to see him just getting off the plane, greeting his old buddy, his old pal. Look at this. Look at the reaction when he sees Netanyahu, this like extremist government that's carrying out this mass murder campaign sponsored by the U.S., bought and paid for by the U.S. And look when he sees him. Hey. Put on the aviators. Dark Brandon. Let's see some Dark Brandon action. Let's animate some laser eyes onto here. It's BB from Philly. East Coast boys just hugging. That's right. Dab me up. And they have no respect for this guy. They're like, here's this old 83-year-old motherfucker that we're going to be able to finesse easily. We can get this guy to believe pretty much anything. Went so dark that it turned genocidal. We didn't want that dark, Brandon. I thought that was supposed to be about, like, owning Republicans. We didn't mean to do genocide when we were doing those memes. Like, these people are carrying out genocide right now, and the United States president is going over to give it his full endorsement, even after this horrible crime that we saw yesterday. We went too dark. I don't want to watch this whole thing. I'm not going to watch like 30 minutes of this goddamn speech, but here's an important part.
You can't look at what has happened here to your mothers, your fathers, your grandparents, sons, daughters, children, even babies, and not scream out for justice.
Well, Palestinian grandparents
Justice
and moms and
must be
dads,
done.
they're getting massacred.
But I caution this: while you feel that rage, don't be consumed by it. After 9/11, we were enraged in the United States. While we sought justice and got justice, we also made mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm the first U.S. president to visit Israel in time of war.
I would say you made a few mistakes.
I made
in the Iraq war that Joe baby killer Biden supported enthusiastically.
Decisions. I know the choices are never clear or easy for the leadership. There's always cost, but it requires being deliberate. It requires asking very hard questions. It requires
what justice did you
clarity
get? It's a
about
great
the
question.
objectives
Where was this justice?
and an honest assessment about whether the path you're on will achieve those objectives. The vast majority of Palestinians are not Hamas. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Hamas uses innocent families in Gaza as human shields, putting their command centers, their weapons, their communications tunnels.
I mean, this is the whole fucked up thing about this hospital thing as well. All this shit about Hamas, they're building tunnels in hospitals. They embed themselves in these, they use human shields. They embed themselves in these hospitals. We've bombed multiple other hospitals and schools before for this exact reason. Oh, but this time, no, we didn't, though. They do that, but this time we didn't do that, though, because people are mad.
In residential areas.
Maybe if they are using human shields in residential neighborhoods, you shouldn't just blanket bomb these neighborhoods, killing thousands of people. That's not an excuse. I mean, it's the other thing. The other thing about this hospital thing, like if you're on like a murder rampage, if you're on some kind of a mass murder rampage, and then you go into an alley and you come out and there's a bunch of dead people in the alley after your public murder rampage, which hundreds of people have seen. They're taking pictures of you. They're saying, yes, this person is murdering people. You go into an alley and you come out and there's a bunch of corpses in there and you're like, whoa, this wasn't me. I didn't do this one. People are like, oh, okay, well, he says he didn't do it, so we got to take him at his word there. He says he didn't do this one. I don't know. Yeah, it is psychotic because they're literally justifying an Israeli strike while also saying it wasn't them. That was the really confusing thing about yesterday, all the conflicting stories, you know? It was us and they deserved it. Oh, it wasn't us. It was Hamas. Oh, it wasn't Hamas. It was Islamic Jihad. They do have human shields, but we didn't bomb this one, but that's why we bomb all the other residential neighborhoods and other schools and hospitals. They haven't settled on the story. They started with the wrong lie and they had to adjust in real time. Just shooting in every direction. You're just throwing shit at the walls. And that's part of the strategy as well, too, right? You just overwhelm people. People just get totally overwhelmed with lies until you don't know what reality is. Until you doubt your own senses. You doubt your own mind. Your own sense of reality gets completely just turned upside down. Yeah, they said that Palestinians killed Shireen Abu Akleh and then they went ahead and beat up all the people carrying their coffin. It was the exact same thing. Like the whole murder of Shireen was like the exact same, step by step, literally the exact same strategy. Their story is not straight because they're torn between celebrating internally and pretending to care for Western libs. Yeah, that is true. Does anyone remember that U.S. military ad where some sniper shot 3 generations of a family and then cried and said they made him into a child killer? No, that was not an ad. I think that was a show. That was like a TV show. But I remember exactly what you're talking about. He killed 3 generations of a family, but he felt super bad about it, though.
Innocent families in Gaza as human shields, putting their command centers, their weapons, their communications tunnels in residential areas. Palestinian people are suffering greatly as well. We mourn the loss of innocent Palestinian lives like the entire world. I was outraged and saddened by the enormous loss of life yesterday in the hospital in Gaza. Based on the information we've seen to date, it appears the result of an errant rocket fired by a terrorist group in Gaza. The United States unequivocally stands for the protection of civilian life during conflict.
You don't.
And I agree.
The people that you were there hugging and kissing, you're standing in front of their flag right now, and your own flag is responsible for the deaths of millions of innocents as well. You can't say that. These are mutually exclusive ideas. We're only arming and funding this country, giving them like billions of dollars per year, unceasing diplomatic support for whatever they want to do. Our whole media apparatus is geared to rubber stamp what they're doing, but we stand against the deaths of civilians. They've killed thousands of civilians. You take out this whole hospital story, remove this whole hospital story from the narrative. You're standing on a pile of civilian corpses right now at this very moment. We unequivocally stand against the deaths of innocent people. You don't. Bullshit. You don't.
I truly grieve for the families who were killed or wounded by this tragedy. People of Gaza need food, water, medicine, shelter.
Who's stopping them from getting food and water? It's not Hamas.
The Israeli cabinet I met with for some time this morning to agree to the delivery of life-saving
Talk to your friend.
Assistance.
Talk to your friend that you hugged and kissed when you got off the plane about the food and water for people in Gaza.
That the aid should go to civilians, not to Hamas. Israel agreed the humanitarian assistance
You just
can
voted
begin
against
to
that at
move
the
from
UN.
Egypt to Gaza. But let me be clear. If Hamas diverts or steals the assistance, they will have demonstrated once again that they have no concern for the welfare of the Palestinian people. And it will end.
Well, what's with all
As
the
a practical
coughing?
matter,
You have COVID for like the fifth time,
stop the
Joe?
international community from
Turning
being
your
able to
already
provide this
dying
aid.
brain into a fucking pile of goop? There's something sickening about this too. The way that like Israel in their like entirely Western focused social media presence, entirely designed for Western audience, is another thing you see in the same thing with Ukraine as well. For those still wondering what happened at the Al Ahli hospital in Gaza last night, we have receipts. Like using this kind of fucking lingo. Oh, we're showing we've got the receipts to prove we didn't do this war crime. I know you have dozens and dozens of war crimes just from the last week that you can easily tie us to, which we do not deny and we actually are proud of and think are good. But we've got the receipts on this one. Like, there's something so fucking gross about that to me. There's some shitty consultant that's writing these tweets too, probably in the West. Or one of the many Israelis who's just fucking American or Canadian. You know, I keep seeing these people of these footage of like settlers, and they have fucking American accents. See the video of the lady that's like doing while Gaza's being bombed and thousands of people are dying, she's doing a day in the life thing about baking for the Israeli soldiers. And she's from fucking like Ohio. Like, you're American. You're a white American. And you're telling me you're indigenous to this land. You're literally from fucking like Kansas. Or wherever it is. We have the receipts. Here's what I'm talking about. Oh, look, we've got the footage the next day. And Nathan Rooser is on the case. Look, he's got satellite images, he's got photos, he's got red circles, he's got lines showing the different meters. We're getting better evidence. I'm willing to share some preliminary thoughts on the hospital explosion. The photos of the scene are, to me, not consistent with an airstrike and are not consistent with the claims that 500 plus people were killed. That's Nathan Rooser of the ASPI, which this account apparently does not exist. That's good. This man works for a think tank that is sponsored by the United States government and Western weapons manufacturing companies, and he's on the case. He's on the case. Hey, y'all, I'm making the brave men, women, and non-binary pals in the IDF my favorite marshmallow salad today. Let's get at it. That's what we're seeing, yeah. This is who we're supposed to feel sympathy for in this. Yeah, we can watch the clip of the guy on Piers Morgan. That's what I mean. The pictures mean nothing to me. When one of these propagandists from either Bellingcat or the ASPI are the ones, these OSINT guys that are doing this research, I don't believe you. I'm sorry. I don't believe it. I don't care what pictures of parking lots you have with different lines and circles on them are. You're a propagandist for empire. I don't believe you. End of story. End of discussion. And where's that other guy? The real Bellingcat guy. Elliot, what is his name? Elliot something? He's on it as well. But look, Biden doesn't even seem like he believes this. Look at how reluctant he is. Like Biden, I feel like in this moment, looks like he's like, I can't believe I have to say this bullshit.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we got to overcome a lot of things.
Biden's like, I can't believe they're making me do this shit. Like that's what he looks like. What's the one with the hot mic cinnamon challenge? Yeah, the Shirley Pod, that's right. They're the genocide discoverers from the concentration camps in Xinjiang. They're very good at analyzing those satellite pictures. These people are being repurposed now. Again, that's how much they care about Muslims being victims of genocide. They've moved on from the Uyghur stuff to now support Israel's ongoing second Nakba and ongoing genocide. I'm sorry, I don't believe you. If you're one of these think tankies or one of these OSINT guys that's sponsored by the CIA, I don't believe you. End of story. Well, you see, China bad, Israel good, so China genocide real and bad, Israel genocide fake and good. That's the Bellingcat editorial line on this. And like I said, the whole thing that just obfuscates everything. You start laser focusing on this, and it turns into a he said, she said thing. And then you lose sight of the fact that it's just one in a series of non-stop massacres that have been going on for, 10 days now. IDF releases a recording. I haven't listened to this yet. Releases a recording of an intercepted phone call between two Hamas operatives who discussed the failed Islamic Jihad rocket that landed on the hospital. And it's just cartoonish from what I've seen too. They're like, "Hey, hello. We're so busy doing evil stuff. Did you know that like we blew up this hospital by accident? Oh, we're going to blame it on Israel because we love being evil."
بس بقول لك أول مرة بنشوف الصاروخ زي هيك والشظايا هذه فبقول لك تبع الجهاد الصواريخ الجهاد الإسلامي هاي
ايه
فهم بقولوا تعاون الجهاد الإسلامي
انه من عندنا هذا
شكله من عندنا
مين اللي بيقول هيك؟
بيحكوا إن الشظايا تبعت الصاروخ إنه الشظايا محلية مش زي شظايا
ايش بتقول؟ سبحان الله من عندنا ما لقاش غير ينفجر في
عاد هذول تلاقيهم من المقدرة الورق اتفلت محط فيهم ايش اصدر
I'm not big on OPSEC, but I don't know if that's generally something you want to do when you're engaged in this kind of terrorism. Having phone calls where you're talking about specific locations. It's very, very lucky that they intercepted it. Yeah, no, they said the guy mentioned Islamic Jihad at the beginning.
مستشفى المعمداني دب اللي هو فسه ونزل عندهم.
هو في مقبرة وراه؟
المعمداني يقول لك عند الساحة بالضبط.
هي وين لما تدخل على الساحة؟
أول ما تدخل على الساحة تدخلش على البلد عيدك اليمين في مستشفى المعمداني.
عرفتها.
Like, and they post this and they're like, well, case closed. Yeah, they squeezed in a ton of information into that short conversation. It was really good that was intercepted. So if this story was true, though, then why are they releasing these obviously fucking ridiculously, cartoonishly fake recordings? Several experts confirm Hamas's view to Channel 4 News that the audio tape of Hamas operatives talking about the missile malfunction is fake. They say the tone, syntax, accent, and idiom are absurd. Hello. Hello, yes, this is Quran bin Infidel Killer. Would you like to talk about the specific crimes we're doing? I guess that's what they're up to over there. I don't know. I guess my whole point about talking about this was just that, like, it makes you feel insane. It makes you doubt your own senses, your own beliefs. It completely, like, overwhelms you with the different versions of stories and different lies. It obfuscates the ongoing massacre that's happening. No, same with me, Poison. Same with me. It's been horrific. And like I said, I'm just gonna go ahead and continue believing that the country that's currently engaged in this barbaric bombing campaign is responsible for this horrific bombing as well. Even Michael Tracy's lapping people on this. Here's our progressive Democratic Party members.
How important, Senator, is it that Israel publicly release intelligence backing up their analysis that the IDF was not responsible for this deadly hospital blast in Gaza?
Well, I mean, listen, I don't tend to require Israel to provide proof of the claims they make. They are an ally. My default position is to believe Israel.
How important?
Good. Yeah, that's great. That's good. That's very good. Like, there are so many lies that we can point to. A nonstop barrage of lies, not even from like decades and decades and decades, just from the last couple of years. The nonstop barrage of lies that we can point to, which have been proven. Why would that still be your position? Why would it be your position to believe the person that's lying to you deliberately over and over and over and over again for years? Proven. Like, this is not some kind of conspiracy, some kind of anti-Israel conspiracy. These lies have been proven. How would that still be your position? It's like your fucking friend that lives on the couch. He's going to pay you back that $5 he owes you any day now. It's been 5 years. It's like, no, he says he's going to the bank right now. He's going to get it. He's going to pay me that backlog rent payment anytime now. He's just on his way to do it now. He's looking for jobs right now. After a certain point, you have to be like, okay, well, this is not, I like you, I respect you, but I don't believe you anymore. You know, that's just like something you have to go through. Surely I'll get to kick that football this time. Yeah, the law of averages, that's right. They've been caught lying so many times. At some time, one of them has to be true. No, we don't, Ice Tray, but I guess my point was just that, like, even if it is your ally, I'm talking from the perspective of someone like Chris Murphy, even if it is your ally, and after a certain point, after the nonstop lies and crimes, maybe it's time to cast some doubt on the things that they say rather than instantly believing it. You know, the United States have been saying, like, hey, can you please stop building these settlements? These settlements are actually illegal. They make all of us look bad when we talk about, like, international law and everything. It makes it totally impossible to have any kind of a ceasefire or any kind of, like, peace talks when you keep building these illegal settlements. Can you knock that off? And they're like, no, fuck you. I'm just going to go ahead and believe them anytime they say anything. They're our ally. It's like, Jesus Christ, what an abusive, one-sided relationship there. Yeah, and there's this guy, Hananya Naftali, who initially, at first, right as soon as this happened, Israeli Air Force struck a Hamas terrorist base inside a hospital in Gaza. Multiple number of terrorists are dead. It's heartbreaking that Hamas is launching rockets from hospitals, mosques, schools, and using civilians as human shields.
Shalom, everybody. I've been called up from the front line to a different front, the digital warfare. The Prime Minister has called me to join this task force here behind me that is fighting around the clock to fight and defend Israel in the media. There is a war between good and evil. And Israel's battle is your battle as well, because there is a lot of misinformation, a lot of hate, blind hate, anti-Semitism, and lies. We all have to fight it together. So I call you to stand on the right side of history. Take a stand, a bold stand for Israel, and together we are going to win this war. There is no other option. Thank you very much. Shalom, everybody.
They literally use more evil framing when a Chinese weather balloon exists over America than when literally endless bombing and murder happens. Yeah. So this is the guy. That's the first thing he said as soon as this shit happened. Celebrating it. Saying we did it and it's good. And then later on he's saying the mysterious explosion in Gaza, Hamas blames Israel for this. I believe it's either a failed rocket that hit the hospital or something that was done on purpose in order to get international support. And this guy works with Netanyahu. He's like in an official capacity.
Sarah and I are delighted to be with you, and especially delighted to be with Hananya in India. Now, I'll tell you about Hananya. He works for me. That's not an easy thing to do.
Because they tried to say, like, oh, this guy's not actually connected to the government or anything like that. He's just some guy. He has no connection. You literally have Netanyahu being like, he works for me.
I'll tell you about Hananya. He works for me. That's not an easy thing to do. But he does it very well. You know what he does? He produces content. You know what India does? She produces content. Now together they're going to produce a lot of content. So Sarah and I, and I'm sure all of you, wish them a life of content and a life of happiness together. And this is something that we wish for all the people of Israel.
Speech to begin with.
But I, speaking at least for some of the people of Israel and for my wife, wish the best to both of you. Have a happy, content life.
He works for me. And that's the guy who, as soon as this happened, said this is a strike and it was good that we did that. It's like when some MP or something celebrated Nord Stream getting destroyed and then deleted the tweet. It was the Polish MEP who's married to, is it Stephanie Shelton? What's her name? What's her name? What am I talking about? Ann Applebaum. Stephanie Shelton. What is that? Who is that? I'm confusing different propagandists. But yeah, married to Ann Applebaum, who's been a big part of kind of creating these kind of nationalist myths and promoting this kind of double genocide theory. Okay, I was thinking, you know who I confused it with? Stephanie Kelton, who wrote the book The Deficit Myth about modern monetary theory. That's who I was confusing that with. I was confusing it with someone and then messing up the name of the person that I was confusing it with. I just saw, Genocide Joe is trending, yeah. Robertson Manchurian candidate activated. I must kill the queen. That's a reference to Naked Gun. It's not a real statement of intent. It's just disgraceful, too, in front of the Israeli flag and the American flag to have the fucking audacity to say this as well.
Like the United States, you don't live by the rules of terrorists. You live by the rule of law. And when conflicts flare, you live by the law of wars. What sets us apart from the terrorists is we believe in the fundamental dignity of every human life. Israeli, Palestinian, Arab, Jew, Muslim, Christian, everyone. You can't give up what makes you who you
These
are.
mass murderers.
If you give that up, then the terrorists win. And we can never
We're
let
still
them
doing
win.
this again.
You know, Israel's a miracle.
Yeah.
A triumph of faith and resolve and resilience over impossible pain and loss. Think about October 7th, the Jewish holiday, where you read about the death of Moses, a tragic story of a profound loss to an entire nation, a death that could have left hopelessness in the hearts of the entire nation. But though Moses died, his memory, his message, his lessons have lived on for generations of the Jewish people as well as many others, just as the memory of your loved ones will live on as well. After reading the story of Moses' death, those who observe the holiday began reading the Torah from the very beginning. The story of creation reminds us of two things. First, that when we get knocked down, we get back up again, and we begin anew.
This man is
Second,
barely
when
alive.
we're-
Is Biden going to make it to 2024? I really don't know. He does not look good. He does not look good at all. 0%, I would say 0% chance that he makes it. If, let's say, he manages to win again in 24, I would say 0% chance he makes it through the following term. 0%. America's just an embarrassment. You just imagine if I was slurring like this, talking to a cop at a traffic stop. Like this is the point man, the PR man for American hegemony showing up. This like slurring old, defeated old man. Yeah, and you're quoting
By the
Chumbawamba.
rules of terrorists. States you
I mean, that's my main point. I'm going to continue just believing my own two fucking eyes. I'm going to continue believing the country that's responsible for dropping 6,000 plus bombs on Gaza over the last 10 days is responsible for this bombing. And while we're focusing on this and getting into a back and forth with these OSINT guys and these blatant propagandists, we're losing sight of the fact that these massacres are just going on and on and on and continuing while we're focusing on who is right about this one and who is wrong. Is this the Piers Morgan thing? Okay, I guess that's a good thing to put next. Thank you, Dr. Maggot, for like getting me on track here. Should we watch the whole thing? Because I saw there was a shorter one on Twitter going around, and I also wanted to talk about look at Norm Finkelstein's interview with Katie Halper as well.
The thing is, the thing is, and I understand, and I also heard Ben Shapiro talking about Human Shield. So you remember my wife's family, they live in Gaza. So I asked them, I told them, when Israel gives you the nice warning, the cute warning, does Hamas force you to stay in your home so you can be bombed and use as human shield? You know what? Hassan here, my wife's cousin. He's a loser. You know, he told me. You know, when I asked him, does that happen? He told me no. The lying son of a bitch lied to me. I told him, you don't understand. Ben Shapiro and Ron DeSantis keep saying that Israel warned you and Hamas asked you to stay put. So I told you, he's a loser. He never kept a job. He even failed in all of the interviews to become like a human shield. I would believe Ben Shapiro.
Let me ask you this,
So let's go with that. No. Let me ask you
At some point, I must be able to ask you questions. It's not a monologue for you, Bassem.
If we agree that for the 14,000 casualties, I mean, who's counting, are human shield, does that mean that every single one of those civilians was standing, obscuring a military target behind them? Because that's a lot of weapons. I mean, Hamas is packing.
No, of course it doesn't. And look,
it doesn't. So there's some collateral damage. Lots of collateral damage.
Yes.
It's fine, yeah. You kill some to save some and then kill some more. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Again, it comes back to proportionate response. When the world...
That's a good face. I mean, just the whole human shield argument too, right? It's taking the propaganda for what it is, just taking it on its face value. Oh, they're using human shield. What kind of a moral army is be like, oh, they're using human shields, so we're just going to continue to execute all those people, And it's not our fault. If you're a moral army, you don't blow people up when they're being used as human shields. You try and help them. How is that an excuse? It's absurd. And here's a shorter version. Let's try and see as much as this is possible. This is a really long stream. I don't know if we can get to the whole thing. Let's skip ahead here.
Operating militarily according to rules of international law, period. Unequivocally. It's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true. This rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved, it's absolutely not true. They could have risen up. They could have fought against that evil regime which took over Gaza in a coup
Yeah, I
d'etat.
believe these people bombed a hospital.
But we're at war. We are
Look
at
what they're
war.
saying.
We're
Look,
at
listen to
war
what they're
with
saying. Look at your own two eyes and what you see, and listen to what they're saying. Yeah, I think they did it.
That's the truth. And
I don't
then
care
when
about
a
the
nation
OSINT
protects
guys.
its home, it fights. And we will fight until we'll break their backbone.
So he's saying these civilians had a choice, basically.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Hello, Majority Report. Hello, how's it going? Thank you for the raid. I appreciate it. Thank you to our friends at Majority Report for the raid. Hello, welcome. We're just watching this interview with Norman Finkelstein that Katie Halper just did. Norman, who's been super, as always, is pretty unapologetic in his denunciation of the Israeli government, his support for Palestinian people. He's been kind of in his element lately. So I think this should be great stuff. My last chat in MR was no raid. Well, guess what? Guess what, baby? You raided. You're here now. And I'm Rob, by the way. Hello, it's nice to see you. Please hit the follow button. If you don't mind, please smash that follow button. And if you can, also subscribe to TRRS. If you can. Every little bit helps when people support this show. The only way that I'm able to continue doing this show every day, which I feel very fortunate to be able to do, is if people subscribe. So if you can, please subscribe to TRRS. I appreciate it a lot, and it really helps me out.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Raptors are flying under the radar. Scotty's gonna have a breakout year. You heard it here first.
Thank you, Ice Tray. 24 months of Tier 1 from Ice Tray. Congratulations on the brand new 2-year sub badge for Ice Tray. I'm not super enthusiastic about the Raptors season. I think the doom and gloom is maybe a bit too much. I think last year was really rough, but also there was a lot of sort of unfortunate shit that happened last year that was kind of outside their control. I still think they might be okay, pretty good this year. I don't think they're gonna win the East or anything like that, but I'm not a doom and gloom Raptors guy. Yeah, Schrader's really good. Yeah, he's gonna be good. A new system. I'm not doom and gloom about the Raptors right now. Anyway, let's hear. They named themselves after the dinosaurs, as the team was created right after the release of the film Jurassic Park, which was very popular. And so they named themselves the Raptors. But you know what? It's okay. I think it's cool. It's cool to do that. It's a fucking great movie. Anyway, here's Norman Finkelstein and Katie Halper.
Is that he's basically admitting it's not a war on Hamas.
Well, it's very hard to reconcile several facts. We will get to in the course of this evening who bears the burden for what. But let's just take the most elementary arguments and then proceed to more complex ones. So Ken Roth, who was the former head of Human Rights Watch, he wrote an article today in The Guardian, and he described Hamas
I don't know about Katie's relationship with Jimmy Dore.
A military dictatorship.
I think on a lot of things, especially on this issue, Katie is a really strong voice and does a lot of good coverage and a lot of good analysis. So
the civilian population accountable.
I do respect her and the work she does a lot on this subject, especially.
Military dictatorship. Number two, if what Herzog is saying, if he's being literal, and there's no reason to doubt him being literal, he's holding the 1.1 million children of Gaza accountable and legitimate targets for extermination. Is that a reasonable argument? Let's now look at the other side, because that's the more interesting question, in my opinion.
I'm just going to make a sandwich, folks. I'll be right back.
We can agree, and I don't have any problem saying it. It is a repressive regime, and there's little room for dissent. However, the same cannot be said about Israel. For the Jewish population in Israel, we're going to leave aside the Palestinian population of Israel. For the Jewish population of Israel, it's a relatively open society. There is a certain amount of dissent that's clearly tolerated. In fact, Amira Haas, the correspondent for Haaretz newspaper, it's the most distinguished newspaper. It's not a mass seller, but it's a distinguished newspaper. And Gideon Levy, another columnist for Hamas.
Haaretz. I'm sure there are a lot of people in Israel calling him a correspondent for Hamas, though.
Yeah.
But you didn't mean to do that.
Gideon, if you're watching this, forgive me. Both of them wrote quite hard-hitting columns initially when the horror of October 7th became apparent. They wrote pretty hard-hitting columns, and they were allowed to. They were able to. So here's the point. Israel has conducted, at least at this point, about a dozen brutal operations against Gaza. The best known ones are Operation Protective Edge in 2008-9, Operation Cast Lead in 2008-9, Operation Protective Edge in 2014. Then there was the assault on the Mavi Marmara, and there are many more. Okay? Now, Israel is a democratic society for its Jewish population.
Right. The caveat.
You look at the polls, each and every one of Israel's murderous operations, which hopefully we'll get to later, is supported by 90% of the population. It's usually about 92% of the population. Okay? So we can say that Israel's murderous operations against the people of Gaza, which left in the 2008-9, it left 1,200 people dead, 350 of them children, 6,300 homes flattened, the entire infrastructure destroyed. In 2014, Operation Protective Edge, it left 2,200 Palestinians dead, 550 of them children, 18,000 homes destroyed. Now, those operations in an open democratic society were supported by about 90% of the population. By Mr. Herzog's reasoning, certainly if the people of Gaza are held accountable for the actions of a military dictatorship, then the people of Israel must be held accountable for the actions of the democratic government which it has voted into power. That being the case, now I'm not saying I believe it, but that being the case, by President Herzog's standard, everybody who was killed on October 7th, now I know how this is going to be distorted on the web, so I'm going to repeat myself. I am not saying this is my opinion.
This is what I've been saying as well. By their own twisted Zionist settler logic, they are suggesting that it is okay.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
GM Rob.
Lily, hello, Lily. Thanks for the 16 months of Prime. I really appreciate that. How are you doing, Lily? But yeah, it's pointing out through their own logic. Through their own logic, they're justifying the very violence against civilians that they're using as the pretext for this whole invasion. Their own logic. You know, if you're just responsible, if you're as a citizen, if you're responsible for the crimes that the people that you've elected are committing, if that makes you a target, a legitimate target for violence, they're making that case, like through their own twisted logic. It's extremely fucked up.
I am simply applying the logic of President Herzog. If everybody in Gaza is accountable for the actions of a government that's a military dictatorship, then, and therefore a target of extermination, that's what Mr. Herzog said, then every Israeli who was killed on October 7th must also be a legitimate target by Hamas and whoever else committed those atrocities on October 7th. I don't see if there is an error in my reasoning there. I would be very interested. You have listeners there. I suppose quite a few don't like what I just said. That's just an exercise in basic logic.
What do you think the response would be from the Israelis if you said it to them, to the Israeli government, from the Israeli government?
Oh, they would say we were acting in self-defense. That's what they would say. And then I would say, Gaza, you'll allow me just go, I'm going to get to how I would respond at the end. This is going to be a little bit a long excursus. That means that's the fancy word for digression.
Right.
Okay.
Very Jewish.
Thank you.
And by the way, everyone, because we're not doing any Patreon, I'm really glad all these people are watching this. Please like this stream and subscribe, but like this stream because we want people to come over and hear what Norman is saying. It's a very easy thing. You literally just do the thumbs up. Okay.
Okay. So let's try to go through this expeditiously, and I'll be leaving out some facts, but we'll do our best. The occupation of the Gaza Strip begins in 1967. 70% of the population of Gaza consists of refugees and children and descendants of those refugees. So it's overwhelmingly a refugee population. As we've already established, it's also a child population. And it came under Israeli occupation. Now, here are the basic facts, and I'm going to try to do it quickly. It's actually a complex picture, but I will try to simplify it. Number one, in 2006, there were elections held in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank. The elections were urged upon the Palestinians, not least by then President Bush. Among others, Jimmy Carter, the former US president, among others, he was a witness to the elections. He pronounced them, and now I'm quoting him, completely honest and fair. It happened, it surprised everybody, including Hamas, but Hamas won the elections, the parliamentary elections. Immediately as the results came in from these free, completely honest and fair elections, Israel, followed by the United States and the EU, imposed a brutal blockade on Gaza. From there on in...
That's when Condoleezza Rice said, what we're seeing are the birth pangs of a new democracy.
Did she say, I don't remember that statement. I know she said in 2006, when there was the war in Lebanon.
Great. Sea urchin ceviche.
She said, we're seeing the birth pangs of a new Middle East. Now, it's possible she said that, what you just called, but I don't recall that statement. In any event, without going into the details, which your listeners later on can probe me on, since 2006, there has been this brutal blockade on Gaza. Nobody can go in, nobody can go out, with the rarest of exceptions. Gaza is 25 miles long, 5 miles wide. What does that mean? The 5 miles wide, if you're a New Yorker, and some of your listeners will probably be New Yorkers, 5 miles is the distance from NYU to Columbia University. NYU on West 4th Street, Columbia University on 116th Street. That's the width of Gaza. The length of Gaza is 27 miles. 25 miles, excuse me. It's shorter than a marathon.
For the 22 months.
So if you can picture in your
I
mind
appreciate that. Thank you.
A marathon as the length and the width, the distance from NYU to Columbia, that's Gaza. Gaza is among the most densely populated areas in the world. It's more densely populated than Tokyo. As of now, the numbers they vacillate over a period, but as of now, 50% of the people in Gaza are unemployed. Among youth, which is predominantly the folks who broke through the gate, the unemployment rate is 60%. Half the population is classified by international humanitarian organizations as suffering from, I'll use the technical phrase, severe food insecurity.
Right.
So the picture I just described has more or less endured, that more or less picture has endured for 2 decades. The folks who broke through the gate have lived that life of joblessness, hunger, not starvation, hunger, hopelessness, despondency, despair, depression for 20 years. A large part of that population had to endure in the most direct of ways the results of Israel's various murderous operations. Family members killed, homes flattened, and all the rest.
Not being able to leave for medical procedures.
As I said, with the rarest of exceptions, nobody goes in, nobody goes out. So, if you put all those pieces together, those discrete pieces.
Okay, Jesus Christ. I literally clicked the button. I clicked the button. I was even saying like, no, don't want to be muted here. And I clicked the button and I somehow messed it up. I was literally thinking about making sure that I was not muted, and I still muted myself. Excuse me. I'll get the hang of this soon. Maybe in a year or 4 sometime. I'm going to figure this shit out. No, but I was just saying that, like, hello, DJ Mule. What's up? I love you too, sir. The idea of like growing up in this environment. We talk about the population of Gaza and the amount of children that are there, and how like what that must be. It's unfathomable to even really think about like growing up in that kind of environment and what that does to you, and the nonstop, the fear and the terror that you're living under. Like we saw the story of the kids that were playing soccer on the beach that were killed by is killed by the IDF as well. Another thing that they lied about until they couldn't lie about it anymore. And then it was like, it turns out we did it, but it was an accident or whatever. One of those things. The way that must completely warp you psychologically to grow up in this environment as well. And then we're surprised then when people grow up in that environment from childhood to adulthood. And it's like, wow, how did these people end up becoming extremists? How did they join this like extremist organization that carried out these massacres? Well, it's just unthinkable. There's something must be in their genetics or in their DNA to explain this. How could this have ever happened? I think that's been the very frustrating thing about this whole thing, talking about these Hamas atrocities and suggesting that they occurred in a vacuum, suggesting that they occurred in this like just purely born out of this like hateful ideology, and completely ignoring all that context. Is why I keep talking about this, right? It's like when we talk about this stuff, it's not like we don't need to sit here and deny, despite all the lies. There's been a lot of lies about these kind of atrocities that then spread around the world. They get repeated by Joe Biden, etc. But like, you don't even have to pretend that nothing bad has happened. But this is the cycle of violence that colonialism creates, or apartheid. You know, you're creating the exact conditions for this kind of violence to happen. And then when it does happen, inevitably, you use that as an excuse to justify even more brutal retributive violence that just starts up the cycle again. And the kids that are living in Gaza right now are going to grow up into adults. And some of those kids are going to end up going down that exact same path. And this is by design that this happens. Anyway, it's really heartbreaking and to think about the idea of growing up in this environment. It's just like, it's unfathomable that we've allowed that to continue. And this entire occupation of Gaza and this entire occupation of the Palestinian people is completely subsidized by our governments, and they support it 100%. They pay for it. And we're creating just generation after generation of totally traumatized people who, yes, sometimes act on that in violent ways. And we act so surprised when this happens. It's really sad, I think, that we can't unpack that in any way, or we can't examine our own role in creating that situation. We can never do that. We couldn't do it after 9/11 either. Now is not the time to talk about American foreign policy. We've been attacked Now's not the time to talk about everything that we did to contribute to this exact situation. And in fact, you're only helping the terrorists to talk about this. You know? It's the exact same twisted logic.
Of data, if you put them all together, it's unsurprising that the Conservative Prime Minister of the UK, David Cameron, described Gaza as an open-air
I have watched his
prison.
clip about the flotilla. I mean, like I've talked about before, the flotilla was one of the first things that really radicalized me on this subject, because I followed that flotilla and was really shocked by the violence that it got met with, and seeing this process of being whitewashed in the media in our political class was a really pivotal moment for me.
One of Israel's eminent sociologists, Baruch Kimmerling from the Hebrew University, he described Gaza as, quote, the largest concentration camp ever. So I skimmed the surface. Time doesn't allow to do more than that. Now, I put this question to Israel's defenders.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, Diego, talking about the kids that are being locked up and imprisoned by the IDF, and all these calls to like release the hostages. They must release the hostages. And that's the thing. If we're gonna talk about releasing hostages or being some kind of a precondition for a ceasefire, Israel should release the hostages that they have as well, which is the people that are locked up in their prisons, who have not even been charged or convicted of a crime, many of them children.
They say Israel has the right to self-defense, and therefore Herzog is in the right when he says we have the right to target everybody in Gaza, every man, woman, and child. We have the right to exterminate them, because that's what no water, no fuel, no food, and no electricity means. I don't think even Israel's defenders can dispute. Now remember, the last major Israeli operation, Operation Protective Edge, lasted 51 days. If what Netanyahu is saying is correct, if what Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying is correct, we're talking about no food, no water, no electricity, and no fuel for a lot more than 51 days. So I think it's hard to dispute that that's not a plan for genocide. Without trying to be evocative, I'm trying to stick to the facts. So now let's return to the question. If you claim that Israel has the right to self-defense, I would ask, do the Palestinians have the right to free themselves from the largest concentration camp ever? Now, you might say, okay, now we have arguments on both sides. I would have to say no. I would ask your listeners to ask themselves the question. It's a very simple question. I wrote an article about it with my colleague, comrade, Jamie Stern Weiner. The title was, you can find it somewhere in Jacobin. The title was, it was in 2018 during the Great March of Return, and the Palestinians tried nonviolently to break the siege. And even human rights organizations were referring to Israel's right of self-defense. I have to say I found that quite appalling. And so I and Jamie Stern Weiner co-authored an article under the title, I think you can find it, Katie, if you do a little research. It's called, Do Concentration Camp Guards Have the Right to Self-Defense? Do concentration camp guards have the right to self-defense? To me, maybe because of my family background, I'm a little partisan on this issue. I think that's a rhetorical question. I think the answer is obviously not. I think the occupants, the inmates of a concentration camp have the right to break free. Now, I don't want to go on at such length that you don't have a chance to interact with me. So I will say a few more things, and then, okay, They changed the title.
Yeah, they did not have the provocative title. I saw a video with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's neither here nor there.
I'm just showing you the article.
Now, my view is that they don't have a right of self-defense.
And like you're saying, talking about, do people have the right to break out of the largest concentration camp ever? That's what I woke up to on the morning that this started, the Al-Aqsa flood. I woke up and I saw images of the Gaza prison fence being bulldozed, and that's what I was responding to in that moment. And people tried to twist that around and tried to suggest that I was supporting violence or atrocities or rape or murder or whatever. But like any person, anyone that knows anything about this conflict should be inspired by that image of that prison fence being bulldozed. You know? And when that pressure comes on, that's when you start to think about, oh, should I like clarify? Should I apologize? Should I pull? But it's like, no, I don't think we should. I don't think we should. I think if that's what you recognize that Gaza is, this massive concentration camp, anyone should be inspired by images of breaking out of that concentration camp. And no one should be surprised that people that grow up in that environment could be possibly responsible for retributive violence. You know, we don't have to like it, and I don't like it. But we should be able to understand why that is happening. You know, if you're horrified and scandalized by brutal violence, then you must advocate for this occupation to end. That's the cause of the violence. That's where the violence is coming from. Israel still won't release numbers for women and children. I would like some clarity about which of these, because they keep saying, oh, 1,300 Israeli civilians have died. I mean, I've seen footage. And once again, to clarify, I'm not saying nothing bad has happened. I wouldn't say that. I don't believe that. I've seen footage, though, of IDF positions being attacked. So I would like to see some clarity about these casualty numbers and who was in the IDF and who is one of these civilians that's being attacked. I would like a little bit more clarity about that. And I find it a little strange that that hasn't been released. Even victims of the attack from Hamas are calling for peace and no more death and bombings. Yeah, and you know what? I have a lot of respect, endless respect, actually, for people that have been attacked themselves or have lost family members and are saying, don't use this as an excuse to wage war on innocent people. You know? And I think we should respect that. If we care, if we claim to care about the people that have been victimized by this kind of violence, we should listen to them when they say that. Yeah, I think the whole conspiracy angle about them knowing it was going to happen and then using it to justify it's for all they say it's like Israel's 9/11. I think on that level it absolutely is. You know, I think they absolutely did. How do you plan this operation? They talk about the massive surveillance panopticon. They talk about having the ability to surveil everything that's going on. How do you plan this operation in full view of the people like that, in full view of the mighty surveillance abilities of the IDF? I don't know. Folks, I'm not going to sit here and justify or make excuses for violence against innocent people. We can talk about how it happened. We can talk about the sources of the violence, apartheid, colonialism. Like I said, I talked a couple days ago about how I keep thinking about the Indian mutiny against the British, against the East India Company, when these British sepoys mutinied, led to this widespread rebellion, and it led to horrible, horrible violence against British women and kids. And it's awful to read about. It's awful to think about. The source of that violence, just as the same way as the source of this violence, is colonialism. It's this cycle of colonialist violence.
I have to add 2 points. It's covering a lot of ground, and I want to give you and also listeners an opportunity to interrogate me. The first point is, the claim is that how can they have a right to self-defense if they want to destroy Israel? The factual record shows, I can't go through all of it now, and you'll forgive me if I refer to my book, but I go through it quite carefully, the factual record in my book, Gaza, an Inquest into Its Martyrdom.
Which is very good. I have it.
Hamas was prepared to recognize Israel and to engage in negotiations on the basis of international law. Now, I want to be very careful about this because I'm an old-fashioned leftist who believes that there's no contradiction between my politics and truth. As Antonio Gramsci famously said, the Italian Marxist, the truth is revolutionary. And I have abided by that dictum the whole of my adult life, and even part of my non-adult life, the belief that there's no contradiction between the two. So there are many statements by Hamas saying it was prepared to settle the conflict on what's called the two-state settlement. Now, it is true, and I'm not going to, as I said, I'm not out to score points. I'm out to try to give your listeners an accurate picture. It is true that Hamas insisted that as part of the two-state settlement, it had to include the right of the Palestinian refugees to return to Israel. And I'm perfectly, even though that's legally a correct position, I recognize as a practical matter, it raises serious issues. And the only way to resolve it is to go into negotiations and try to see if you can find a resolution of that problem. I shouldn't call it a problem. A resolution.
Just linking the video
issue.
as well if people want to go give it a thumbs up or
it is not
subscribe
true
to Katie's channel
that
or support
Hamas has been committed from its inception up until today to the destruction of the state of Israel. That is, and I think there's a wealth of documentary evidence to support it, that is a factually incorrect statement. So then I think that argument has been tentatively answered by myself, but you could check the documentation and, argue with me. The second point is, and this is a much touchier question. You say the Palestinians, if Israel claims a right to self-defense, you say the Palestinians have the right to liberate themselves from a concentration camp. However, the obvious response is, but when they liberated themselves, they went on as Amira Haas said today, on an orgy of violence. And I'm not going to dispute that. And I will confess to you, I'll speak candidly to you, that when the events of October 7th occurred, initially, you will recall, it was very unclear what happened. We knew there was a breakthrough in the fence. We knew civilians had been killed. The numbers were put at approximately 50 on the first day. We didn't know if Israel had exaggerated that figure, but there was clearly a significant number of people killed. And from that moment, and then thereafter, when more information became available, I would say, honestly, I was very torn about what verdict to render on these events. I want to distinguish for you listeners, there's the factual side, what exactly happened. And by the second or third day, it was clear something horrendous had happened.
In other words, not just breaking through the fence, more
Correct.
than, yeah.
Yes, there was, as Amira Haas said, an orgy of violence. There's no question about that. So the factual side, obviously we don't know all the details, and there are a lot of details to know. Whether that was an order by Hamas or whether the militants went mad, they're settling the score. How many were Hamas? How many were other people who broke through the fence and just decided to exact revenge? We don't know the details, but we know enough, okay? And we're not going to argue that. We're not going to argue it. I'm not going to try to find extenuations in the facts. I will accept, as I said, an atrocity of significant magnitude occurred. That's a factual question. But then comes the more complicated question. It's the moral judgment. And here I will acknowledge my fallibility. I have, over the whole of my adult life, since June 1982, I've invested myself in the Israel-Palestine conflict. And now as I look back, my life is coming to an end. It's on, I'm on the downside of the curve after midnight. And it was a huge investment of my life. I'm not trying to be a martyr about it. I'm just being factual about it. And in this...
You were denied tenure because of it?
No martyrdom, if you can...
I'm just giving people a sense of it, yeah. Smeared, very much smeared, yeah.
Yeah.
You got canceled.
In a kind of division of labor developed between myself and Professor Chomsky, it wasn't formalized, but informally it was there. Namely, I was a very conscientious, fastidious, assiduous researcher. I collected the evidence to make the case, but I always deferred to Professor Chomsky for the moral judgment. Professor Chomsky was steeped, besides 10,000 other disciplines, he was steeped in moral philosophy, and also not just the Western tradition, in the Hebrew tradition. His father was a famous Hebraist, so I attached a huge amount of weight to his moral judgment. Number one, because of his sheer immersion in all of the relevant moral precepts and philosophical depth, not just precepts, and also because he's clearly a very morally serious person. Chomsky is incapable, he's constitutionally incapable of a morally trivial statement. It's not possible. No, I'm very serious about that. He takes his calling, his life's calling, very serious. So I always deferred to his judgment for reasons not worth delaying ourselves with now. I was not able to defer to his judgment. It wasn't available at this moment. And so you'll forgive the drama. I was left to my own devices. And I really didn't know how to proceed.
We were talking about when?
October 7th.
Okay, okay, got it. Right, yeah.
October 7th, 8th, 9th.
Okay.
I was on my own. And I knew, at the risk of sounding boastful, and it really is not boastful, I knew that many people were awaiting my judgment. And I was quite nervous about what to say. I didn't fear the consequences of what I...
Chala back boy, if I can just intervene in some of the discourse I'm seeing in the chat. And if you want my perspective on this, I don't think anyone here is cheering on violence against settlers. Like, we can look at clips of like Israeli settlers putting up lawn chairs to watch Gaza bombing campaigns and cheering it on, or people saying like, oh, we want to wipe them out. There's these clips that Abby Martin has done, has interviewed these settlers that have these kind of really genocidal intentions towards Palestinians. I don't think it's like good. I don't think even those people who are not exactly innocent, I don't think that people deserve to die for that. I think it's horrifying. I think it's really horrifying. I think this is the point, though, that we're trying to make, is like, that's why this violence is going on. And using the violence of escaped concentration camp prisoners, using their violence as a justification for this like genocidal campaign is equal, like, more grotesque. It's even more grotesque because it's continuing this endless cycle, which is just going to make Israeli settlers less safe. It's going to make Jewish people in Israel less safe, ultimately. That's why it's so horrible. I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement on that. So it's not cheering it on, but it's trying to find the reason that violence is happening in the first place, and trying to really come up with a moral framework to talk about ending this cycle of violence, which is what all that we're seeing right now is that cycle is being perpetuated even more. It's going to make it so the next time there is some kind of an attack by Hamas or whoever else, it's going to be even more violent towards innocent people. It's making every single person less safe that's involved in that situation. Yeah, Israel is the reason these people have died. I mean, this is my point. This is what I've continued to say. They've lied to settlers and told them it's safe to settle in a war zone or to go to a rave outside of a concentration camp. You know, and again, I don't think people deserve to die for that, but it's, you know, it's not safe. This is the situation that's been created by this endless occupation and this apartheid system. Anyway, let's get back to this Norman Finkelstein thing.
I would say.
You just want to get it right.
Thank you. Exactly. I wanted to get it right. And I didn't know which way to turn. A part of me, a voice inside, was, what would my parents say? And I'm pretty clear on what they would say, but I can't prove it because they've passed. So I then thought about...
So, Hollaback Boy, this is the last thing I'm going to say about this. I hear what you're saying. At the same time, one thing that I've really told myself that I wasn't going to do is contribute to a narrative that results in that the Israeli military then ends up using to justify their bombing campaigns, or contributing to a narrative. Like if there's people that want to really focus on the violence of Hamas, there's no shortage of like media outlets or people that are focusing on that relentlessly. I don't feel comfortable in this situation piling onto that and contributing to that narrative, or contributing to a narrative that this is a conflict that has two sides that are at war with one another. You know, we can talk about the reason for this violence.
You're gonna have good old
we can
Rob
talk about
to talk you through all this,
why it's going on, but I also feel a little uncomfortable contributing to this narrative that people are using to justify further genocidal violence. That's one thing that I have really tried to avoid to do. Thank you, Gald Greek, for the gifted sub.
They would say.
They
you
would
can
not
count on me. You're
Palestinians.
going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
My father was in Auschwitz.
And
my
time
mother was in
abolition,
Majdanek.
thanks for the 4 months.
They would never condemn people who were consigned and confined into a concentration camp. In fact, let's be clear.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good point to talk about this. In the same way that, like, if Jewish people were being held in a concentration camp and broke out and committed a bunch of violence against nearby villagers, I wouldn't be sitting there condemning them and talking about that violence and making sure that I condemn that. You know, it can be horrible. We can be horrified by this kind of violence, but I don't think it's really like, it's kind of obscuring the power dynamics of the situation to really relentlessly focus on that. In the same way, you know, violence against indigenous people, against settlers in the founding of Canada or the United States or Central and South America, you know, or slave uprisings. Like there's numerous historical examples of these kinds of colonized and enslaved people rising up, and often or always innocent people are caught up in that. They're caught up in that violence. But do you condemn people that are breaking free of slavery? It doesn't mean you think the violence is okay, but do you sit there and condemn the people that are trying to escape from slavery, escape from being colonized, you know, escape from being genocided? I don't think it's really helpful to sit there and focus relentlessly on the terrible things that happen as part of this process.
Condemn people who were consigned and confined into a concentration camp. In fact, let's be clear.
I'm just going to rewind just one little bit there.
A part of me, a voice inside, was, what would my parents say? And I'm pretty clear on what they would say, but I can't prove it because they've passed. So I then thought,
what do you think they would say?
They would not condemn the Palestinians. They were in a concentration camp. My father was in Auschwitz. My mother was in Majdanek. They would never condemn people who were consigned and confined into a concentration camp. In fact, let's be clear. They were born into that concentration camp called Gaza. My parents had beautiful lives in their youth, which made what happened 10,000 times more painful. That's another story for another day. Okay. So I have no doubt they would be ashamed to condemn the people. Will they be happy with what happened? No.
Pretty
Will
easy
they
to understand, I
inside
think.
be tormented? Yes. Will they condemn it? No. 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 1,000 times, no. I knew my parents. They would be ashamed to condemn it. I know that sounds very counterintuitive to say they would be ashamed to condemn it, whereas everybody expects they would be ashamed not to condemn it. No.
Not condemning doesn't mean that you think it's
I'm
great.
pretty confident of that. I have 2 siblings. They'll probably hear this broadcast. I don't think they would disagree with me on that point. However, that wasn't sufficient for me. My parents had good moral judgment. However, it was not a moral judgment that was honed in confrontation with all of the moral, philosophical literature.
They were faithful, right? As I've heard you describe them in
Yes,
other
they were
interviews
absolutely
to the
faithful,
Soviet Union, for instance.
but they didn't attend to the minutia of philosophy.
Sure.
They had a gut reaction, and they were very confident in their gut reaction. So I was faced with a dilemma, and then I thought to myself, let's go see what the abolitionists, the white abolitionists, had to say after Nat Turner's rebellion. I have in recent times read quite a lot of Frederick Douglass and W.E.B. Du Bois. And both Douglass and Du Bois held the white abolitionists, the best known being Charles Sumner, Wendell Phillips, William Lloyd Garrison, but there were many others, Garrett Smith, but the 3 are the most well known. And if you read Douglass's works and you read Du Bois's work, they speak about these white abolitionists as if you were speaking about a deity.
Right.
They held them in such high regard, such high esteem. And so, with that as a departure point, I went back, I looked at the Nat Turner rebellion, and then I looked at what was the reaction of William Lloyd Garrison. He was the editor, as I suspect you know, of the famous anti-slave periodical, The Liberator. So, first a word about the rebellion itself. Nat Turner, it seems, was a very smart guy, like Frederick Douglass. I'm saying his sheer intellect, it seems to have commanded a lot of respect. He was a slave, of course, but I'm just saying he was known to be very smart. He also happened to have been a crazed religious zealot.
Like John Brown.
Which I'm going to get to in a moment. Yes, since you said it, I'll just repeat you.
John Brown and Harper's Ferry as well.
Both of them believed that God had inspired them to carry out their rebellions, and that every act they committed was sanctioned by God. You might call them premature jihadis, Nat Turner and John Brown. Now, when Nat Turner went on the rebellion, according to Stephen Oates, the very respected historian, he gave the order, Nat Turner gave the order to kill all whites. To kill all whites. And they did a pretty good job, if we can use that expression. They killed about 70 white men, women, children. It was, to quote Amira Haas, it was an orgy of violence. Okay, those are the bare facts, and your audience can certainly make the obvious comparison with the situation on October 7th. So now, having the bare facts available, the next thing is to turn to what do the abolitionists have to say.
About Nat Turner. Right.
About Nat Turner and the rebellion, not just about the rebellion itself.
The rebellion, right.
Yeah. And it happened that William Lloyd Garrison, in The Liberator, he expressed his opinion. Now, I asked you if you can just bring it up on the screen.
Sure. I'll do that right now.
Right.
Because then I can scroll through it. Okay.
So if you scroll down a little, the beginning is regard to Bernie Sanders. We can talk about that later if you like. But just keep scrolling down.
And I can read it if you want, Norm. Just tell me which part.
Here it is, beginning in what we have so long. Okay. I would kindly ask you, the abolitionists were very literate, and so their language is very sophisticated. So in order for the audience, your audience, to appreciate it, I would be grateful if you read it slowly and let the words sink in. I've already read it at least 5 times
right.
because it was so important to me to see how a moral judgment, a proper moral judgment, is formulated. So if you begin with what we have so long predicted, this is Garrison speaking.
William Lord Garrison. Okay. What we have so long predicted, at the peril of being stigmatized as an alarmist and disclaimer, has commenced its fulfillment. The first step of the earthquake, which is ultimately to shake down the fabric of oppression, leaving not one stone upon another, has been made. The first drops of blood, which are but the prelude to a deluge. Let me start again. The first
and this is a really interesting analogy. Again, I've been talking about British colonialism and the violence of colonized people against the British, which you also saw in Afghanistan and South Africa and other cases as well, and how that's used to justify further violence. I think that following this Nat Turner rebellion and the reaction of the abolitionists is really, really interesting. So I'm really happy that they're doing this.
Drops of blood, which are but the prelude to a deluge from the gathering clouds, have fallen.
But also, I just wanted to point out as well, you look at the Nat Turner slave rebellion, which I'm sure they're going to get into here as I interrupt them, and women or children that are killed in that, it's indisputable that it was very violent against people that were not slave owners or people that were children, they were just white. But also in the same thing, it's the exact same thing when you talk about British colonialism, when you talk about Israel-Palestine, colonialism in Vietnam is another example, or like other colonized nations, or in Haiti that had this kind of like reaction to it. When you're looking at the violence of slave rebellions versus the violence of slavery, it is still zero comparison in this scale and the inhuman scale of the violence on one side versus the violence of the revolters. Similar to this case as well. You look at the apartheid system and the daily violence that's visited upon Palestinian people in Gaza and elsewhere for decades now, going on 70 years. We don't need to pretend that no violence happened as part of this Al-Aqsa flood operation, or that we celebrate or support the violence, but it's pointing out the source of it, and it's also pointing out the fact that like there's nothing that could happen that would ever balance that scale. Like absolutely nothing. Anyway, I'll stop interrupting this important segment here.
The first flash of lightning, which is to smite and consume, has been felt. The first wailings of bereavement, which is to clothe the earth in sackcloth, have broken up our ears. The crime of oppression is national. The South is only the agent in this guilty traffic. But remember, the same causes are at work, which must inevitably produce the same effects. And when the contest shall have again begun, it must be again a war of extermination. In the present instance, no quarters have been asked or given. But we have killed and routed them. We can do it again and again. We are
now, just as you're reading it, and you'll excuse me for interrupting you, he's now describing the Israelis after they have inflicted a massacre and another massacre and another massacre.
Okay.
Go ahead. But we have killed.
But we have killed and routed them. We can do it again and again. We are invincible. A dastardly triumph, well becoming a nation of oppressors. Detestable complacency that can think without emotion of the extermination of the blacks. We have the power to kill all. Let us, therefore, continue to apply the whip and forge new fetters. In his fury against the revolters, who will remember their wrongs? What will it avail them, though the catalogue of their sufferings, dripping with warm blood fresh from their lacerated bodies, be held up to extenuate their conduct? It is enough that the victim were black. That circumstance makes them less precious than the dogs which have been slain in our streets. They were black, brutes pretending to be men, legions of curses upon their memories. They were black. God made them to serve us.
Stop for one moment. I would ask you listeners to remember this passage when we hear Naftali Bennett in an interview that you're going to show.
Right.
They were black. How can you dare deny our right to kill them?
Ye patriotic hypocrites, ye panegyrists of Frenchmen, Greeks, and Poles, ye Faustian declaimers for liberty, ye valiant sticklers for equal rights among yourselves, ye haters of aristocracy, ye assailants of monarchies, ye Republican nullifiers, ye treasonable disunionists, be dumb. Cast no reproach upon the conduct of the slaves, but let your lips and cheeks wear the blisters of condemnation.
Yes, he's saying you condemn You praise the heroism of the French.
Right.
You praise the heroism of the Greeks.
And their equal
You
rights, right?
praise the heroism of the Poles. You praise the idea of liberty. And then when it comes to these people, the blacks, the tune suddenly changes.
Right. And they speak out against, or they condemn aristocracy, right? And monarchies.
Yes.
But, yeah.
And now he talks about the attacks on those who defend the black slave. Go ahead.
Ye accuse the Pacific Friends of Emancipation of instigating the slaves to revolt. Take back the charge as a foul slander. The slaves need no incentives at our hands. They will find them in their stripes, in their emaciated bodies, in their ceaseless toil, in their ignorant minds, in every field, in every valley, on every hilltop and mountain, wherever you and your fathers have fought for liberty, in your speeches, your conversations, your celebrations, your pamphlets, your newspapers, voices in the air, sounds from across the ocean, invitations to resistance above, below, around them. What more do they need? Surrounded by such influences and smarting under their newly made wounds, is it wonderful that they should rise to contend, as other heroes have contended, for their lost rights? It is not wonderful. And wonderful in that sense doesn't mean amazing, right? It means surprise. It means surprising. Yeah.
And bear in mind all the claims that Hamas, they propagandize these people to hate and to kill. And Garrison saying here, they don't need the propaganda. It's their real life experience on a daily basis that's quite sufficient to create their hatred of their oppressors.
It's actually quite understandable.
For ourselves, we are horror struck at the late tidings.
Okay, I want to just stop there for one half moment. Here, Garrison is expressing his horror at the Nat Turner revolt. We are horror struck at the late tidings. Continue.
For ourselves, we are horror struck at the late tidings. We have exerted our utmost efforts to avert the calamity. We have warned our countrymen of the danger of persisting in their unrighteous conduct. We have preached to the slaves the pacific precepts of Jesus Christ. We have appealed to Christians, philanthropists, and patriots for their assistance to accomplish the great work of national redemption through the agency of moral power, of public opinion, of individual duty. How have we been received? We have been threatened, prescribed, vilified, and imprisoned, a laughingstock and a reproach. Do we falter in view of these things? Let time answer. If we have been hitherto urgent and bold and denunciatory in our efforts, hereafter we shall grow vehement and active with the increase of danger. We shall cry in trumpet tones night and day, woe to this guilty land unless she speedily repent of her evil doings. The blood of millions of her sons cries aloud for redress. Immediate emancipation alone can save her from the vengeance of heaven and cancel the debt of ages.
And I write at the very end, the last line is mine.
It has to be noted, writes Norman Finkelstein, that whereas he stated that the excesses of the slaves could not be justified and he was horror struck at the late tidings, William Lloyd Garrison did not condemn the slave revolt.
Yes.
So they were not, it was not justifiable, but not condemnable.
Kate, you read it as I read it, and then you interpret it on your own. I read it as he recognized an atrocity occurred, but he would not, as I said, there is a difference between the factual acknowledgement and the moral judgment. The factual acknowledgement is like any definition of atrocity, an atrocity occurred. That's a factual statement. But there was no moral judgment cast on Nat Turner. Mm-hmm. Quite the contrary, the moral judgment was cast on those who allowed the situation to continue to prolong itself. The enslavement of the African American people.
It's the centuries of slavery that led to that violence.
That was an incredibly principled position that Garrison took. He was told, don't go south because you're not going to come back. So when I read that statement by him, my appreciation of the abolitionist soared, because there were very few people after October 7th who were willing to say about the Israelis and the Palestinians what Garrison said about the whites and the African American slaves.
It's funny because I'm just going to show a.
And Elbob, I think that's a morally profound position to take. the idea about nonviolence. There's certain cases, though, where that's been the only option that's been presented to people. The Vietnamese are a great example. The Vietnamese were not going to end colonial occupation through nonviolence. They had over a century of the French colonizing the Vietnamese, and then they had Americans move in directly after they defeated the French. Americans move in directly to just inflict brutal imperialist violence upon them in an effort to ensure that they would not free themselves from colonization. And that was the only option that's left. I mean, this is why I was talking about that quote from Che Guevara: imperialism, it turns men into beasts, into bloodthirsty beasts. You know, when you leave people with absolutely no choice, and it's the absolute last. Most people don't want to live lives of committing unspeakable acts of violence. Most people just want to be left alone. But when you've forced people through years or decades or even centuries of occupation and colonization and exploitation, because that's an essential part of the colonization process, right? It's not like you're just living there. You're exploiting the people. You're exploiting them. You're taking their resources. So your higher classes can enrich themselves and everyone else gets poorer. And that was the case with the Vietnamese. They didn't have any choice if they wanted to free themselves from colonization. They tried to go the nonviolent way. Even after the French left, you have Ho Chi Minh. He's trying to appeal to the American government, trying to talk about the American Revolution and how he trying to appeal to that sense of like morality for Americans. And they went in and just like fucking wrecked the entire country. And they had to fight. Like, it's a really noble thing to think, but I think when you live in the empire, when you're an empire baby, like I am, you're born in the empire, you grow up in the empire, you live there your entire life. It's very, very easy to take this moral stance about violence and say the violence on both sides has to stop. I think it's a lot more complex when you're growing up in that kind of an environment. You're growing up in Gaza, or you're growing up in colonized Vietnam, or you're indigenous Native American and your land is being colonized and your culture is being destroyed and your people are being genocided. I think the onus is on us. I think the onus is not on colonized people to stop being violent. The onus is on us to stop. If we want the cycle of violence to stop, us that live in the empire, we have to stop. We have to stop the violence ourselves. Like the Israeli occupation has to end. Our global network of imperialist violence has to end. I'm not comfortable condemning or lecturing anybody in the colonized world, the global south, people that have lived under this kind of violence and occupation for their entire lives, or generations in some cases, multiple generations. I don't feel comfortable, me, living here in the empire, in my comfortable life, that I've never been faced with any kind of serious hardship or danger or bombing or colonization. I feel uncomfortable, and I think it's a little chauvinistic, actually, to live in that environment and then wag your finger at oppressed and colonized people for being violent, even when we are scandalized by the violence, even if we are horrified by it. That's kind of my stance on that. And like we're pointing out here, there's a difference between not condemning that. It doesn't mean we think it's good or we're not scandalized or horrified by it. It doesn't. But I think that as the colonizers, we're in the empire, the onus is on us to be nonviolent.
I did not write an article like you did, but I do want to show these two things that I tweeted related to this, not to Nat Turner, because that's kind of where my mind went immediately after this, when I was seeing all these people condemning Hamas and talking about Israelis. One second, Brad, we're going to get to that in a second. I don't think that people get that posting about the deaths of Israelis while having said nothing about the systemic killing of Palestinians is like posting about the deaths of Nat Turner's victims while having said nothing about the violence of slavery. And then I also wrote, let's see.
And if I can just comment on that, that's exactly what what Garrison decried.
Right.
The hypocrites.
Yeah.
The hypocrites who shed these crocodile tears for the Israelis and not a word
for
the Palestinians.
And I also, on a similar note, wrote, imagine condemning Nat Turner, never having condemned slavery. That's every single person who has condemned Hamas and never condemned the blockade. And imagine never having criticized slavery until after you condemn Turner and then pretending that you care about Black lives. That's all the gaslighters pretending to care about Palestinian lives who literally never mentioned Gaza, Palestine, or Palestinians until after October 7th. And speaking of never mentioning Palestinians, I'm actually going to ask you to respond to someone whose relative you know. That is Amy Schumer. You obviously know her cousin Chuck. She has had some interesting things to say, and I wanted to show you one of the things that she said. So let's look at this statement that she made, because she was tweeting a lot about it, Gaza and Israel. So before we show what she said, Brad, let's show her the advanced Twitter search that I did. So I did an advanced Twitter search. And if you click on that one, you'll see no results for Palestine
yes,
or
Amy is
Palestinian
related
or
to Chuck
Palestinian or
Schumer.
Gaza. So she's never in her life tweeted about them. And yet this is something that she posted on Instagram. First, they came for LGBTQ, and
uncle,
I stood up because love is love. Then they came for immigrants, and I stood up because families belong together. Then they came for the Black community, and I stood up because Black lives matter. Then they came for me, but I stood alone because I am a Jew.
Well, there are two obvious comments. It seems they never came for Palestinians in her list of everybody they came for, which kind of proves the point that they're not worthy.
I stood alone. I stood alone as a Jewish person. I only had the entirety of the United States government and mass media apparatus and every single other Western country standing with me. Aside from that, though, I had nobody.
It's not as if the Palestinian issue is hidden. It's not concealed, but it never even occurred to her to include in her list of victims Palestinians. That's
the ultimate victim.
The first
that's right.
point.
Multi-millionaire celebrity.
I think it's
had a really hard time.
A wee bit of an exaggeration to say that she stood alone. Amy, please, I plead with you, try to get out of your navel. I know how hard it is, and I recognize that navel gazing is a activity that's common to many people, but Amy, I don't think anyone out there didn't condemn.
Yeah, she stood alone with every single politician, every single media figure.
Even every single edifice. The White House was lit up in blue and white.
Even the NBA, every NBA team as well stood with you as well.
Lit up in blue and white. And
something in Auckland, New Zealand.
Navel-gazing, self-absorbed person.
A Schumer.
Right. Thinks that she is so heroic, so courageous, so brave, standing alone for the Jews. It's so pitiful. It's so pitiful. You're alone, Amy. You're alone. You're about alone as a person standing at Times Square on New Year's Eve. You're alone. It's just wretched.
It is wretched.
I'm not going. Go ahead.
Well, the reason it's wretched is it would be one thing if it kind of stopped there. It's just a self-absorption, but it's a self-absorption that is used to stop any conversation about what is now being done in the name of Jews.
What she did was she went through every liberal issue.
Right.
LGBTQ, Blacks, immigrants. She went through every liberal issue, which kind of gave her hand away. The Palestinians are not a liberal issue.
Right.
Now, I would say I have to be careful about that. We're having a serious conversation, and we should be attending to all the facts. Probably
the governor of New York is in Tel Aviv now. Like, what the fuck is she doing? Why is the governor of New York in Tel Aviv? Why doesn't just every single person in the Democratic Party head over there? They might as well. I'm just looking at this. Like, what the hell? Why don't you all go over there? Why don't you all even move there, actually? I'm proud to be here. Israel was doing a bunch of war crimes, and I just had to be there to show my solidarity. Fantastic. Anyway.
The only good thing that came out of the wokeness, the woke phenomenon, was wokeness did include the Palestinians as part of its cause. And when you do a balanced judgment on the woke phenomenon, it has to be acknowledged on the positive, on the credit side of the debit sheet, that the Palestine cause did gain a significant salience.
Yeah.
But
people can be selectively woke.
Well, what happened was, as what always happens, the moment of truth. The
Yeah,
moment
Eric
of
Adams
truth
is
with
going to
the
go to protect
wokeness
his future retirement home.
came in 2016 and 20 when they all attacked Bernie Sanders.
These people are so weird.
And now you had another moment of truth. Namely, it's true, Palestine was on the woke agenda. And what happened? First, AOC used her platform, her undeserved platform, to attack the demonstrators at a demonstration, to express her horror and shock at what happened on October 7th. And then, it was AOC, I forgot, and Ilhan Omar. All the focus was on the people who were killed. That's perfectly justified to spotlight the innocents who were killed. But what about using the occasion, exactly at the risk of sounding like a broken record, exactly as William Lloyd Garrison did? Read his statement. He used the occasion of Nat Turner's rebellion to indict all those who stood by quietly or passively while the situation or the condition of the slaves was allowed to endure.
I think the AOC fraud watch is annoying too. And like I've said before, I really try not to participate in that. I do think it's important to point out, though, when the celebrity emissaries of the progressive movement in the Democratic Party fail on Israel-Palestine and don't take courageous moral stances, or really on any issue of imperialism. It seems like there's no imperialist issue that you won't be at least extremely squishy on. And I do think it's worthwhile to point that out. I do think there's whole people that have turned that into their whole careers is talking about that, which I think is useless and annoying. I agree with that. I do think it's worth pointing out, though, when they fail on these issues or when they don't show courage on these issues. Like the other day when she was asked about Iron Dome funding while Israel is carrying out this bombing campaign. Yeah, I would support the Iron Dome if it came up today. It's like, why are you doing that? That's just embarrassing. Anyway, he's going down this path of wokeness. There's a point in there, but it's also he's tying it into this culture war stuff that he's also become kind of fixated on.
So there, to me, it's a spotlight on that great tradition of which I feel part, and of which the abolitionists is part of my tradition. I remember when Dr. Cornel West was asked to comment, or he himself took the initiative to comment on my book. He said one of the merits of the book was that Finkelstein, myself, or Brother Norman, as he said, Brother Norman illuminates this whole great tradition that the left has. The abolitionists, the communists, the revolutionaries like Rosa Luxemburg, Antonio Gramsci, and so forth, that whole great tradition. And Cornel West said how impoverished what passes for leftism is as compared to that great tradition which I invoked in my book. And that's how I feel when I compare the AOCs, the Ilhan Omars, to a William Lloyd Garrison, for whom, and let's be clear, it took raw physical courage for Garrison to write something like that. Did it take any courage whatsoever, a jot, an iota, for AOC to attack the demonstrators against what was happening.
Yeah, and she criticized the demonstrators who organized this pro-Palestine protest as soon as this happened, knowing full well that Israel was going to bomb Gaza into the ground. It's more important than ever to stand with Palestinian people at that moment, and AOC criticized them and called them like pro-Hamas. You know, that's something that's worthy of criticism. And like I was saying, for all these people that think it's some brave stance, it's like, look at me, I'm the brave truth teller. I condemn Hamas and I condemn the Israeli occupation. It's not really that brave. And I think pointing out that Garrison statement after the Nat Turner uprising is a good example of that. You know? Who doesn't condemn? He doesn't condemn it. He says it's shocking, it's horrifying. What I condemn is the institution of slavery. You know? And there was the only person in the U.S. government, Cori Bush maybe came close to this, the only person who made a statement to that effect was Rashida Tlaib. Which is, to me, unacceptable. That should not be a controversial stance to take if you count yourself to be part of this progressive left even. The violence is horrible. It's shocking. It's upsetting. I condemn the occupation. I condemn apartheid. No, I will not vote for the Iron Dome. No, I will not. That's a brave position to take. It's not brave to say both sides do bad things and I am against it all. You know, that's not brave. Or it's not even nuanced.
Naomi Klein, I'll acknowledge she subsequently retracted part of her statement, but her initial statement that was published in the Guardian newspaper attacked the demonstrators. And the same thing with Ilhan Omar. The degree, the magnitude of sheer moral cowardice. And then to carry on like Amy Schumer, poor me. We Jews, we're all alone.
Well, it's woke washing.
All alone, unlike the 2.2 million people in Gaza who've languished in the concentration camp for 2 decades.
Israel does a lot of, I came up with this term, woke washing. I didn't come up with it for Israel per se, but I did come up with the term woke washing. I should have patented it. But when you use wokedom to cover up actual problematic things. So Israel is expert at this because they're always pink washing, but their general genre of is woke washing. And so people like Amy Schumer are very good at using this language of weaponizing solidarity to justify not having any solidarity. And if you demand that she stand or even acknowledge Palestinians, you're not holding space for her to be mourning. And you're not showing up. I mean, all this language that is weaponized by people. Same thing in.
I think the woke washing thing is a strange for me. You can just say pink washing, just say she said pink washing. Just use that term. You know, that's a very legitimate phenomenon. We talk about it often on here. The way this pink washing takes place to cover up the crimes of imperialism in Israel and elsewhere. We don't need to. We already have words for this. We don't need to be getting into this culture war stuff. That's my opinion.
In personal lives, you see it. The same thing. People will weaponize language like that just in order to be very bad people. But they hide behind these ideas of boundaries and holding space and triggered. But I know we're having a serious discussion, but I want to
just comment on that. I'm listening.
And there is a point, I understand the term has been beaten to death. There is a point using this kind of language, she's saying, the triggering generational trauma, holding space, using that kind of terminology to support a status quo, both domestically or international, that's inherently violent and exploitative. That's not necessarily just pink washing. I get that the term is annoying, but that is a real phenomenon that we do need to unpack a little bit. Because that is a real thing. Using this kind of language.
Very carefully to what you're saying. And I'm pondering in my mind that by focusing on the Palestinians,
I'm unpacking it. Yeah, I'm doing it myself.
You don't allow for space for our mourning.
I'm obviously not saying that. You understand that.
I know.
Okay. Right.
You are paraphrasing those who criticize Palestinian defenders. Yeah. I'm going to say it again, and I know it's going to
I think woke people used that term a while ago, but they probably haven't now for years, considering it's been completely distorted and weaponized by all kinds of incredibly bad faith people, reactionaries, and all kinds of freaks. So whoever was saying it unironically originally has probably moved on to have abandoned it because of the way it's been completely distorted and mutated. Yeah, it's usually just a euphemism these days just to be transphobic, which unfortunately Norm Finkelstein has engaged in, which is not something that I agree with, as much as I do respect his clarity and integrity talking about this particular issue.
They sound wearisome and tedious after a while. Go read on your own, I'm speaking now to you listeners, reread on your own Garrison's statement. Did Garrison give any space for the mourners of the whites who were killed? Did he? Well, answer. I mean, Kate, you read it. You're very literate. You're hyper literate. Did he? No.
He ridiculed them. He ridiculed them.
He ridiculed them, and he said, "I told you so."
Right.
We warned you this was going to happen.
Right.
We told you so.
And he mocked them for condemning the aristocracy and monarchy and standing with equal rights.
So, I'm going to just say this at the risk of sounding emotive. I stand with Garrison. He earned his place in American history. You read Douglass, you read Du Bois. If anybody in any way tries to undermine the commitment they made, Du Bois and Douglass will not brook it. In fact, in one speech, which I quote in my book, Douglass says, and I'm quoting him now, no black person did more for the cause of the slaves than the white abolitionists. You get that? He says no black person did more for them. That's where he puts them. That's where he elevates them. And I will say again, they earned it. They earned that place in their judgment. As you could see, the prose is pretty sophisticated. These were smart folks. It wasn't the Twitter generation. They knew how to write. And they chose every word because Garrison knew this declaration was going to be trouble. He didn't, if I can say it, he didn't shed a tear for the victims of Nat Turner.
I'm going to try to get through this next part. I do have to go soon, so I want to try and get through this next segment.
There's nobody in God's earth who's read more human rights reports on the occupied Palestinian territories than I have. Now, I don't consider that the most impressive credential. Right. And going to my death, I have to say that it's very, causes me to wonder whether I made the most fruitful, productive use of my life. Because literally, I'm being very serious now. I would say the last 40 years of my life, about 80% was devoted to reading human rights reports. Not once, not twice. I read most of them around 3 times. So I can say with a certain amount of certitude that the statements I'm going to make to you now have a lot of documentary authority. Yes. They command a lot of documentary authority. If you take the case of the human shielding, you go back and you look, for example, I'm taking one example, there are many. If you take the case of human shielding, Amnesty International, after Operation Cast Lead, put out an extensive report. It was titled 22 Days of Death and Destruction. And it looked at the question of human shielding because that came up already in 2008 during Operation Cast Lead. Yeah, it was a huge talking point.
And still is, yeah.
Amnesty International found that there was no evidence that Hamas had engaged in human shielding. However, that's only half the story. The other half of it is there was extensive evidence that Israel engaged in human shielding. Yeah. It forced Palestinians to sit by tanks and artillery as they were fired. It walked Palestinians and fired from the shoulders of Palestinians. It stood in windows, it put Palestinians in windows and fired behind them. So Ms. Schumer is twice wrong. There was no evidence on the strict issue of human shielding that Hamas engaged in it. There is a lot of evidence that Israel
Omar Badar on the Insurgents podcast last week talked about this as well.
Human shielding is a narrow term. I should say it's a term of art. It doesn't have like a scientific precision, but it usually means when you conscript a civilian to commit an unwanted act in the course of war. is there evidence that Hamas fired weapons? It's a separate issue in the human rights literature, though I acknowledge these are not scientifically precise terms. Did Hamas fire from areas which were densely populated? And the answer is yes. However, in general, there was no. This is Gaza.
Yeah, it's a very dense place.
There wasn't a place to fire from. And I'm not going to go into all the technical.
And you know, Elbaum, this
points.
is a phenomenon we talk about often on the show. And you know what? People like Zionists and people that support Israel say, why are you singling out Israel? Why are you singling out Israel? And we don't even have to. We do need to talk about the crimes of Israel because they're going on right in front of our eyes and our government subsidize them. But we talk about this often. It's not just Israel. You say when they make a crazy accusation, it's because they've done it or considered doing it. It's not just them. It's us. It's coming from the empire. Any accusation towards China, towards Cuba, towards Russia, wherever else, it's always, you're pointing the finger, you got three fingers pointed right back at you. It's always an admission. Every time. Literally every time. You can win a lot of money making that bet. Anytime we're accusing anyone of human rights violations or whatever it is, each and every time we're admitting to the same crime ourselves. Why am I singling out Israel? It's just because I'm a big fan of Hamas. That's why. And that is a joke. That is a joke. I was not being serious when I said that just now. Just to be clear here.
Because there are so many gradations.
Right.
In my book, I go through each gradation one by one to cover all possible challenges.
Yeah.
Now, the evidence is overwhelming. In fact, I would say the evidence was
I find a really obscure country to single out. Let's single out
of
Madagascar.
Israel's targeting, not just of hospitals where there were no militants present, but what was particularly appalling was the targeting of the ambulances. Now, I will give you
an example. Talking about not singling out Israel as well. This was going on under the Obama administration with Obama's drone policy as well, which the reporting on that just is non-existent now, this policy which is still going on. But especially during the war on terror, all the double tap drone strikes coming from the United States, it's the same policy, right? You do a drone strike, you wait for a crowd to gather, you wait for the ambulance to show up, and then you strike it again. That happened dozens of times under Obama. Horrifying. Not just Israel doing that. Israel, I mean, a lot of the violence we see is precisely because they're a colonial outpost of Western imperialism. The Saudis in Yemen as well, which is also being facilitated with our own intelligence and giving them the weapons and training to do it in the first places.
It looked like Israel would target a civilian home, no evidence that there were any Hamas militants present in the home. The home is struck, people run out, and when they run out, they call the ambulance. Israel waits for the ambulance to come and then fires rockets at the ambulance. Now, I'm going to tell you as a side note, and it is relevant. It's a personal note. It may sound self-indulgent, but it really isn't. And I hope you'll believe me. Come 2020, I had given up on the Palestine cause. I had devoted 40 years to it. I'm past midnight. And I wanted to look into different areas of intellectual inquiry. And I felt the cause was lost. So I had written, my last book was called I Accuse. And it was this very minute legal analysis of a particular episode in the conflict. And it sold, I'm not proud to say it sold 374 copies, half of which I purchased because I wanted to give it to members of the International Criminal Court because there was a case pending. It was very embarrassing. My publisher even said to me, Norman, you know how many copies this book sold? Now, I had paid for a lot of that book on my own. I paid for a lot of it on my own because I thought it can do something at the ICC, the International Criminal Court.
Or Caucasian Court, as you call it.
Yeah. And then I was working on another study, which was even more minute. And I said to myself, Norman, what are you doing? Nobody's listening. Nobody cares about the details. The cause is lost. You're wasting your life. You're frittering away the last years of your life. This is stupid. So I gave up. There were people who were close to me, like my friend Sana Qasim, a very brilliant Palestinian woman. She was my webmaster. She's a chemist, an extraordinary human being. And she would say to me, Norman, you're not posting anything on Gaza anymore. Norman. And I didn't have the heart to acknowledge it. So I would say, if you have anything to post, just post it. You know, we are comrades in the struggle.
Good idea, Shirley, pal.
Website's as much yours as mine.
Big Dersh fans over here. That'd be fantastic.
And then, when the current round began,
this round?
Yeah, October 7th. I myself had to refresh my memory. And so I sat down to reread my own book. And then, you know what happened? All the rage and anger start to seethe in me again and start to well up. All the lies, the perfidies, the betrayals by everyone, including Ken Roth, including Ban Ki-moon, including a large number of UN bodies. All the lies, the perfidy, the betrayal, and then the horrors that were inflicted nonstop, not without a pause, on the people of Gaza. And so all those feelings came back again. And two things came to mind. Number one, I said to myself, now I know why Garrison didn't say a single word of sympathy for the whites. Because he saw the slaves, the degradation, the humiliation, the laceration. He saw it every day of his life. You know, no, you're not going to get any sympathy from me. And I understood now why I found myself physically, constitutionally incapable of expressing any sympathy, which was the sine qua non, the prerequisite for being part of the quote unquote conversation. You know, I couldn't do it. And so there was that. And the other thing was, it sort of dawned on me all of a sudden. It dawned on me, those folks in Gaza who broke out, it was easy for me to imagine. It was almost like from a bad movie. The night before, October 6th, they went to the mother, hugged her and kissed her. They went to the father, hugged him and kissed him, because they knew it was their last day on God's earth. They would never return. Once they broke out, we know Israel was going to track down every one of them. So, part of them, they said, I'm going to revenge the 20 years of my life that I was confined and consigned to this concentration camp. Those wasted years, my childhood, my youth, and now my adulthood, with no future, no past, no present. And the other part of them, they said, my sister who was killed, my brother who was killed, my aunt, my uncle, my nephew, my cousin, tomorrow I will avenge every one of those deaths. And when I started to reread in my book the descriptions, each one of which, when I was writing the book, my whole innards writhed. I can't tell you. You can't imagine. No, really, you can't. I still remember sitting in a bus reading the descriptions of the horrors inflicted, not by human rights organizations, not by quote unquote Arab sources. The most damning descriptions of what happened during those operations, they came from the Israeli soldiers. Go back and read. I'll give you the titles slowly. Breaking the Silence. Read all they did was report what the soldiers told them during Operation Protective Edge. So it's going to be roughly 2014 or 2015. I won't comment further. Read it yourself. I couldn't bear it. I was sitting in a bus and I just wanted to rip myself apart, or I was being ripped apart reading it. And bear in mind, these soldiers were not peaceniks.
Right.
Not at all. They expressed no regrets. There was only one soldier in the 201 pages. That's what my memory tells me. I think it's right. Only one soldier in the 201 pages who expressed any regret. They were just matter of fact. You know? So, was I shocked at what happened on October 7th? No. I remember I once asked my mother, how did you feel when you heard that large numbers of German civilians were being killed during the terror bombing of Germany? It's often forgotten. I'm not saying this in any extenuation. I'm just speaking again factually. The estimates are about 27 million Russians were killed, about
I always recommend Tyler Shipley's book to anyone that wants to learn about Canada's kind of dark history.
Monsters.
It's fantastic.
And they killed about
get it,
20 million Chinese. In my day, the figure was 25 million, but I'm told it's been lowered. And the third largest figure was Germans. 9 million Germans were killed. So a large number of Germans were killed, overwhelmingly, obviously, civilians.
Dresden.
Well, it was carpet bombing, it was terror bombing. They wanted to force the Germans to submit by terrorizing them into defeat. Again, I'm not passing any judgments, I'm just stating it. And I remember asking my mother, how did she feel? And she said, and my mother was a very humane person. If I have humane impulses, they came from her. She just looked at me and she said, our feeling was, if we are going to die, we're going to take some of them with us. She said it very flatly, unapologetically, but with no bravado. If we're going to die, we're going to take some of them with us. And guess what? On October 7th, that's what those folks who burst through the gates of Gaza did. If we're going to die, they knew it was their last day. We're going to take some of them with us. Is it right? Is it wrong? I'm not passing judgment. I refuse. I won't. It's made me persona non grata, as I told you, even though my book is actually the only book on the political aspect of Gaza. There's Sarah Roy's classic, The De-Development of Gaza, but it's a very narrowly focused economic book, and I focused on the politics. With the exception of all places, Jimmy Dore, and believe it or not, the daughter of, what's his name, Jordan Peterson?
Oh, yeah.
His daughter has a show.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Did they invite you on to attack you?
No. She had me on. Apparently, it's a relatively light show. You get my point. She had me on. Now, the program is supposed to air tomorrow.
I think ending it here is probably a good way to do it.
I remember asking my mother, how did she feel? Unapologetically, if we're going to die, they knew it was their last day. We're going to take some of them with us. Is it right? Is it wrong? I'm not passing judgment. I refuse.
Before we get into his extended comments about going on Jordan Peter's daughter's show, I think that's probably a good place to end it. I mean, listen, this interview was really fantastic. I think that's a great point to leave it on. These are tough conversations we've been having lately, right? Talking about this kind of violence, the violence of the colonizer and the violence of the colonized, and the people that are trying to escape from that concentration camp, to escape from that circumstance that's been foisted on them by these immensely powerful forces. I think that's a good way to. We absolutely should be scandalized and horrified by violence against unarmed people, especially children. Do we have the right to like morally condemn that when these people are escaping from a concentration camp that we helped build? That's the trickier question. Like I said, I just don't think it's a very brave stance to sit there and condemn everyone that's involved in this uprising. You know, whether we're talking about British India, whether we're talking about Vietnamese, whether we're talking about Nat Turner. I think linking it to the abolitionists during that time is a really clever way of talking about this issue. You know, it's the violence of slavery. It's the violence of colonialism. It's the violence of imperialism. It's the violence of apartheid. It's horrible. It's horrible to see it. That's what's causing it, though. So I've got to go soon, folks. It's getting late. I got to go pick up my kid. I really have got to go to the bathroom. I've not taken a break, or I've not gotten up or done anything over the last couple of hours. I'm a mere measly 28 subs away from the goal. I watched the one Piers Morgan clip, but I think that's all I got time for. Tomorrow I would like to focus on the Belt and Road stuff a little bit, in addition to whatever new updates there are in this story. If you can, folks, and I sent the link to Katie's channel. Please support Katie's work. I really appreciated hearing that perspective. If you can, also support my work. Every little bit helps. As I keep reminding folks, the only way that I'm able to continue doing this program each and every day is if people subscribe to the channel. So if you can, please subscribe. Yeah, you can count on me. You're gonna have good old Breakthrough Rob News is covering to talk you through all this. Carl Shaw is covering it with RT, former guest to the show. I'm gonna bring Carl back on the show, actually. VJ there as well, another former guest to the show.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Same shirt. Same shirt in that image. You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. I've just been wearing the shirt the whole time ever since I did that clip. You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. If VJ's been on here, his career's in the up and up. That's right. He got the Rob Rousseau boost, the TRRS boost. Comrade Bushy, thanks for bailing me out once again. Very much appreciated. Thank you for the gifted sub. G Clippy, I really appreciate the 5 gifted subs. That's very, very kind of you. I really, really, really appreciate it. CC Cirrus, thank you for the gifted sub. And Diego, thank you for 2 gifted subs as well. And we do got a bit of a hype train going now, folks. We got a bit of a hype train. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You say Regime Pilled just continued their gift sub. Thank you, Regime Pilled. Thank you, Dynamic Nibbles, as well for the 4 months tier 1. I got to manually update that there. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. Okay, this must be a new username, but thank you, Gilf of Tonkin, for the 19 months of Prime. I really don't think I've ever noticed that before. Despite being a community member for 19 months, I have never noticed Gilf of Tonkin before. My goodness. Gilf of Tonkin. I appreciate that. Thank you. Valued community member.
Wow. Okay, Rob. Seriously, wow.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness gracious. Speaking of VJ Prashad, there he is. There he is. Good Lord. Crad Babes, thank you very much for 10 gifted subs. That is so kind of you. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. student loan big bucks. I really appreciate that. That's really very generous of you. Now we're almost to level 5 of this hype train, folks. And now, I say it, so when I say I'm a mere 28 subs away, I'm just going to say I say that with no expectations that I'm actually going to make it to the sub goal. But now we are actually a mere 6 subs away. So not only we are almost at level 4 of this hype train, but a tiny little 6 subs away from the goal. Thank you for encouraging me on my own stream and for always providing a great show. Have you been doing your stream, Cradbames? I saw you had the background and it was all set up. I have yet to see any follow through on this though. I'm gonna do it. No, Cradbames says. Jesus, this time it's different. It damn well better be. Okay, I'm tired of cracking the whip on this now. It is. I have a girl to impress. Okay, good. Good. I'm glad to hear that. I hope that she's sufficiently impressed. So what do we say, folks? 87% of the way through level 4 of this hype train, 6 subs away from the goal. Are there a few brave heroes in this chat that are going to support the work that I do here on TRRS? You know, it has been a tough week to talk about this, and I don't even mean tough like, oh, it's so hard to talk about all the time. Like, I do feel that to a certain extent, but it is hard to walk this line a little bit and try to have productive conversations about this subject. You know, it's difficult sometimes to know what to do.
You've just become an
elite
elite member of the
oh
friendship
my goodness.
triangle.
Okay, that's enough now. Okay, no, that's enough. That's enough, Crad Babes. Thank you for another 5 gifted subs. No, you're cut off now, though. You're done. You're done.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And CC Cirrus, thanks for another gifted sub as well. That's very kind of you. Also, I'm genuinely surprised, but fucking did it. I've been in this community for 2 years, and I've never paid for a sub until 2 months ago. I'm paying my debts. Well, if you phrase it like that, then I guess it's okay. I guess it's all right. But seriously, I really did not expect to meet that goal. So once again, I am humbled and just in awe of the generosity of the people that support this community. You know, like I keep saying, I would not be able to do this if people didn't show up just to hang out and chat, and people who didn't support the work that I do on here. I really, really appreciate it a lot. Thank you, OnlyFacts. "28 days later in the Discord tonight. I'm sorry that I can't make it." You know, it's possible that I might be able to make it. Going out earlier, what time does it start? 9:30? 9:15? It's unlikely. We'll see, though. The end tunes are perfectly melancholical. That's kind of my specialty when it comes to doing music. Even when I write pop songs, because I love writing pop songs as well, but I love writing songs that you listen to and you're like, oh, this is a nice song. And then you listen to the lyrics and you're like, oh, I'm sad now. I feel sad now. That's kind of my whole that's my whole songwriting conceit there. On that note, I'll just take one final moment to plug a song that I just wrote. I wrote it about a week ago or so. It's called Obvious. It's one of my favorite songs that I've ever written. I really like it. So please give it a listen if you're interested in hearing. I create all the music for the stream, and it's a song that I wrote that I'm quite proud of. So please give that a listen. I also have a bunch of other stuff there up on the Bandcamp page if you're inclined to want to hear that kind of stuff. Anyway, thanks again, folks. We saw our friend DJ Mule in the chat earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and raid DJ Mule. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in today. I'm going to go get my kid from school. I'm going to go out tonight and see some people in real life. I'm going to do a little bit of drinking to try to make the psychological damage of the last week diminish ever so slightly. I will be back tomorrow. Until then, it's me, your friend, Rob Rousseau, saying goodbye and good luck. Take care of yourself. You gotta hydrate. And you know that moment tonight that you're gonna get to and it's like, oh, I should go to sleep, but you know what, I want to stay up for another 3 hours instead. You should just go to bed at like 10. Unless you're watching the movie in the Discord. But don't do that to yourself tonight. You know, when it's like, oh, it's so late. It's so late. But you know what? That's a problem for tomorrow me. That's a problem for future me. Sometimes you have to take care of future you. Maybe you should do something nice for future you instead of continually screwing your future self over. You know? See you tomorrow, folks.